Hey, what's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. Subscribe to Saturday Down South on YouTube. I'm Connor McGarrett. Will, I have a confession. Is this a safe space?
Sure.
Okay. Do not give a 1-star review for what I'm about to say. Do not chastise me. Do not claim that I am not a real ball knower. Do not claim I don't love football. Do not say these things that I realize will be on the tip of your tongue as soon as this comes out of my mouth. Okay? Could we all agree?
This is breaking news to me. I don't know what you're about to say. Okay, I'm with you. This is a safe space.
For the first time in 6 years, and for the first time... Well, yeah, I'll start with that. For the first time in 6 years, I'm attending a fall wedding on Saturday.
I knew it. I see. Okay, well, that's not on you. We've talked about this. That's not about you. You're just being a good friend is what you're doing.
It is one of my 3 best friends in the world. It is the last wedding of our friend group. The last wedding. Like all of our other friends, we have like one friend who's not married. And he's like, yeah, if I get married, I'm getting married in my 50s. It's not happening. Like I've fully accepted that. He'll watch
Super Bowl Sunday. That's when he should get married.
Right? He should. In my defense, besides just that point right there, I realize the groom is an Illinois State graduate who might not treat college football in the same way that you, I, and everyone listening to this does.
Hey, that's a quality win in the Big Ten. Watch out.
It's a quality win for Oklahoma, season opener. There are very few times that I will justify missing a Saturday. I have missed weddings. To do this job.
He's married to the game, folks.
Yeah. Not crazy about that phrase. Not crazy about that phrase. But this is my first time missing a non-cake week fall Saturday since my own wedding, 2016, which was a wedding that was planned before I even got this job. It was planned in 2014 before I was in this role at all. So you get what I'm saying. I do not miss these days very often. I will still be able to based on the way that the wedding is structured. So for those who don't understand like Chicago logistics, this is going to sound very disjointed and strange because it is. The wedding is in the city the ceremony's in the city at noon, and the reception is like an hour west at 5 o'clock.
Is this like a stagecoach situation?
Yeah, sure. I totally know what stagecoach is. Yeah, that's just like that. I'm sure. It's very unique in that way. The good thing for me as someone who would like to be able to watch college football on Saturday is that I will have plenty of time to watch YouTube TV. I will still be able to catch up by the time that we record a Sunday podcast. So that's the good news, is that while my live tweeting will be essentially nothing, I will at least be able to catch up. And I am, maybe this is really what's going to get me canceled among college football fans. And this is something that I've been reluctant to say, but I need to just come out and say it because I've understood like people, I've seen like, the videos of people that are at a wedding and they're watching a game or something like that, or they're at the reception and they're watching a game. They've got something dialed up. The second we get to that reception, I'm giving Laura my phone for the rest of the night and saying I'm going to be present with my friends that I get to see like twice a year, the last wedding of our friend group. I'm going to put my phone away and just chill on week 9 for a second, and I'll be able to catch up and I'll be able to see everything, and I won't miss anything. I'll miss probably some things. Who are we kidding? But I'm going to put my phone away. I'm going to try and be present in this moment of my life that's, been few and far between. So that's where I'm at going into week 9, a very unique place, a place that I have literally talked about. Like I've literally talked about this in therapy of like, how am I going to manage this? Like what's going to be my headspace? I am the guy that doesn't try and travel every single weekend because I like to be able to watch all these games and feel like I have a good feel for how things go. So yeah, week 9 is going to be a little unique for your boy.
I wonder what the most like bizarre thing I could gaslight you into thinking happened. I was like, oh my gosh, like Taylor Green cut his hair. Oh man, like Bobby Petrino has got like a tattoo.
You need to try this. You need to try this and just try and slip it past me on Sunday. And it's not an indictment of my situation, but just see how good you are at this. And, just come up with a few and just try and sprinkle them in just to see my face. And then I'll have to remember back to this moment where I'm like, oh, wait a minute. There are a couple of these. He's gonna try and hit me with a little pump fake.
See, that's why I gotta let you know ahead of time because I'm seeing your face be like, what happened? I wouldn't do that to you. See, if you're gonna be a good dude and hang out with your friends, and you're right, like It's okay. Once you're locked in, you're locked in, and you got to do it that way. And there's nobody worse than the guy who is at the event and doesn't want to be at the event or makes it like plain to know. Hey, I work in college football, so I gotta watch the game. Oh, you guys are getting a drink? I gotta watch the games. And like the only time I've had to deal with a fall wedding, like kind of since I started doing this, was when I was with my ex Brittany. Her brother got married, and they were super cool about it. It was in Florida. It was actually when I saw you. We got to hang out and watch like Georgia, Kentucky. I'm sure I've told this story on the pod before. My move was I ordered pizzas back at the hotel, and I left like let's call it 20 minutes early, just after halftime of the LSU Auburn game, where Bo Nix then ran over LSU. But when
Mm,
everybody else got back, like just kind of right after that, there was just a room full of pizzas in the hotel lobby, and I was just sitting there watching LSU, and I was like, "Hey guys," and they were like, "Oh," and then nobody had to figure out their next move, so we all just kind of hung out. So
smart.
yeah, that's as far as I've gone. But you're right, like that's the right way to do it. There's no reason to just be like, "Oh, I got a dual box in my pocket. Don't worry, guys."
Yeah. Now, when I'm in the car and we're going from point A to point B and in between, like that's a different story. That's a different story. But as long as I am at wedding events themselves, I'm putting the phone away. I'm going to try and be present as much as possible. I admittedly don't always do the best job of being present in my life. And I'm always looking to the next thing. My family would always joke when we go on vacation, it would be Connor time. I always have to know what time it is. It's like, Connor, we're on vacation. You need to dial it back a little bit here. So I'm working on that. I've tried to even be more present on Saturdays. I've tried, like I used to take like religious notes during games and stuff, and now I save everything for after the fact, and I try and just be able to absorb as much as possible. I think it's done me pretty well. To this point. So weekend's going to be a little bit unique. I'll be recording from a different place. Be recording from my mom's house back in the Chicagoland area. So we will still have our normal pod. And maybe a tiny bit later. We'll talk about recording schedule, but it's still going to be coming out Sunday afternoon. So we have great pod coming up. Great pod. Full week 9 preview, plus Brad Crawford a little bit, as well as Lad of the Week. But first, before we get to everything, 7 games to break down here in week 9. A word from our friends at Dabble. Guys, been talking about Dabble for a while now. It is one of the newest and best apps in the DFS space. They've wasted no time making a name for themselves. The social function, it is second to none. They offer a wide variety of sports and making picks, including college football, NFL. Use promo code SDS2 when you sign up today. Receive $25 in bonus cash. No deposit required. Again, that is promo code SDS2 for $25 in bonus cash, courtesy of the good folks at Dabble. All right, well, let's start with number 8 Ole Miss traveling to number 13 Oklahoma, who is a 5.5 point favorite for this one. The over-under I have is 0.5 mentions of Lane Kiffin saying that Ole Miss's annual rivalry with Oklahoma is, quote, disappointing. He did say that.
Mm-hmm. He's on one this year. I love the version of Lane that's winning.
The version of Lane that's winning is basically been here post Alabama, is it not? I mean, it was here at FAU. He hasn't really bitten his tongue very much during his time at Ole Miss. And because I had the same thought initially too, of like, it's fun that Lane has the credibility to come out and say that, and nobody's going to really rip him for it. But he's kind of been like this his entire time in Oxford, right? Where he can just kind of say whatever, and nobody's going to be like, "Oh, well, Lane, come on, let's chill."
I think I don't know which year it was. It's almost like around, and not that it coincided with this, but almost around the Saban retirement. I think that he had like a level of like, I can't beat Alabama, so I got to be humble almost, or it was like a
True.
look in the mirror thing. And then also he kind of had that weird year that we talked about. I think it was 22, where he was like kind of eyeing different job, and he kind of went
Yeah.
into sad turtle mode, and he wasn't really as like fun. But he kind of burst out of that, and like I said, like be it that dad wasn't there to laugh at him, as far as Nick Saban, be that he found Alabama to be a little bit more beatable, be it that they don't, play them as often anymore, just because like the new scheduling and everything. He's just kind of been, yeah, I think that's what it was. I think that he would, get your popcorn ready, and they would kind of come down after the Bama loss. Now it's like just full speed ahead all the time.
Yeah. And now he's just going to say whatever's on his mind, which, look, I would argue that it is an annual rivalry that Ole Miss and Oklahoma now have, but annual only means so much when it's only going to go through the rest of the decade, and then they're going to reevaluate if there is a huge discrepancy in terms of competition level and whatnot. So make of that what you will.
Really quick, I figured it out because of the flip schedule, right? So now he's playing Kirby. Georgia, he went 1-0, so now he's 1-1, and he's like mirroring Kirby now. Kirby's getting a little bit sassier, whereas before he kind of had to keep it underneath because he couldn't beat Saban. I think that's what it was. This like 2-year stretch, he's like, okay, it's me and Kirby at the top now. Cool.
It kind of is. I mean, you could look back at certain stats that would say Ole Miss has won X amount of games in the last however many years. Same with Georgia, and this is a really big opportunity for Ole Miss. And Lane talked about how they don't have anything in common with Oklahoma, like Ole Miss and Oklahoma. They both start with O. It I would argue right now the context of their seasons, they have a lot in common because they are both one-loss teams. They are in the top 15. They desperately need a win here to feel good about their playoff chances. It is not a playoff elimination game per se, but there are huge playoff ramifications for this one. This is a completely different matchup for Ole Miss than last week at Georgia. Oklahoma gets heat on the quarterback in a much different way than Georgia. That's a very well documented area that Georgia has struggled in, and they were able to get it at different points in key moments the last few weeks. But Oklahoma, just over the course of a game, does that just at a higher rate than Georgia. And basically, they do it at a higher rate than everyone else in college football because they're tied for the FBS lead with 28 sacks, not all of which were against Jackson Arnold. It just kind of felt like it.
Just most of them.
9 of them, But I think Trinidad Chambliss, who has been only pressured on 20.2% of his dropbacks this year, that's the lowest rate in the SEC. He's only taken 5 sacks. He is obviously the key to this game and how he is going to fare against that pressure. I know you want to trust the Lane Kiffin offense with the reads. And usually if you can work through your progressions, you're going to get a guy with a nice throwing window to be able to locate. And that's what has been the case for Lane since he came back to the SEC more times than not. I think ideally Trinidad Chambliss would find lanes to scramble more in this one. He's only got 11 scrambles on the season, but those are for 105 yards. That's really good. That's really efficient. That's a sign that a guy is recognizing when he has those running lanes and taking advantage of them. The challenge is that Oklahoma does such a good job of not getting beat there. They faced some pretty good scrambling quarterbacks this year and have all but eliminated that element. Like, think about this. Bryce Underwood, 1 scramble for 9 yards in that game. Jackson Arnold, 6 scrambles for 33 yards, but again, sacked 9 times. And that's the guy with the most scramble attempts among SEC quarterbacks.
If you turn him into a running back, you've done it. That's exactly what they did.
Exactly. And a running back who ultimately is only going to be able to move the chain so much. Arch Manning, 1 scramble for 5 yards. Lenora Sellers, 5 scrambles for 34 yards, but he also took 6 sacks and wasn't necessarily able to utilize that part in a game-breaking way.
It's never Lenora Sellers X amount of yards. It's like, okay, with this way forward, this many backwards, this many sideways, diagonal. So a lot of usage out of him in that game.
I didn't get the next-gen stats on his total yards run. I think it was a little bit less than LSU, but I don't know. It was a whole lot less than LSU. In a game that figures to be tight, I think those moments are going to be so big. When does Chambliss correctly pick a running lane? And when does he not? Because if you guess wrong against Oklahoma, suddenly you're behind the sticks against the unit that's number 1 in the country in yards per play allowed. I like Oklahoma in this spot. And it's not just the Lane Kiffin road game, AP top 25 team thing. I just like this matchup for OU. After seeing how much the Ole Miss defense struggled in that Georgia game, wherein Gunnar Stockton got every blade of grass that he wanted in that game, I think John Mateer playing at home for the first time since the Auburn game, which now feels like a lifetime ago, I think he thrives in this one. And I think he's finally starting to look like a guy that's fully recovering from that surgery. I think the ground game identity with Torrey Blaylock has another big day. I probably haven't done a good enough job of discussing some of Ole Miss's run fits and the issues that they've had this year defending the run, but they've been hit for 175 on the ground in 5 of 7 games this year. I think OU, in a game that it has to have, they cut Mateer loose a little bit, multifaceted rushing attack. I've got Oklahoma winning this one 28-21.
So I think on some level that is a bit of an indictment of the Ole Miss defense, right? Because after what we saw against Georgia last week, I don't know if Pete Golding has got the stamp of approval. I think that they did enough offensively to win that game, honestly. And it really took, a special performance on offense. And we could talk about Georgia's defense, and they haven't been the Georgia defense of old, but they were, when it mattered. And I think all it took was a couple of stops against a Georgia offense. And again, we came into the year thinking we don't really know who the dudes are. We don't know who who stirs the drink for this offense, as it were. And I think that side of the ball is going to be really key here because Oklahoma has been so up and down. And I think that on the season, as we say, the stats matter now. On the season, we'd say Oklahoma's offense is not good. I think it's been disappointing. And part of that's because of Mateer's health. Part of that's because of the running back situation. But I think for Oklahoma to be successful in this game, it would take kind of a return to form, or I guess at this point, a breakout game by John Mateer.
I would agree to disagree. I think it's been good relative to expectations. I think you would still take this version of the OU offense because you saw how bad it could be last year. It's been improved to the point where they could be sitting here with one loss going into late October. And I would, it's not elite. It's definitely not elite. It has its limitations. I think you've seen some of the flaws play out. It's not been a vintage OU offense, but at the same time, has it been good enough? Yes. Do they still have enough ways to be able to beat you and beat a quality team? Yes. And I think that's kind of all you could have hoped for with this new look offense. I don't think you could have expected to turn back the page to Big 12 days. And that's not a shot at Brent Venables, who just got dunked on by the Big 12 Twitter account. But it is a sign that you're making progress and you're at least getting to the point where you can justify having that play complementary football with the defense that you have. And it's a defense that I still think is elite. I do still think it's elite. So I'm not trying to poke holes in what you're saying, because I think what you're saying, like mostly, like pretty much everything else, I would agree with. But it's interesting. You talk about the Ole Miss defense and some of the areas that they've struggled. We're all flipping to that game against Washington State, going, "My God, how are they getting these chunk plays? What's going on with this unit?" And what kind of happens sometimes is that once you suffer that first loss, we look at you a little bit closer and we go, "All right, maybe this was." Does that makeup that was covering up that pimple right there that you had, that was when you're undefeated, and now makeup's kind of wearing off and we're starting to look at you in a little bit different way? Kind of feels like that's what's happening with Ole Miss and their defense specifically. Not so much Chambliss, who obviously didn't have the fourth quarter he was hoping for, but it's defense that's had issues. It's had some issues, and they've been able to make the key plays late. But man, I think it's a different task going into that atmosphere. What will be a very, very charged atmosphere that is going to be excited to see John Mateer back playing on that home field.
Yeah, and I mean, I fully agree with everything you said too. I mean, at the end of the day, we could talk about expectations, but this is an Oklahoma defense that's allowing 9.4 points per game.
Pretty darn good, Will.
And that's without the non-offensive score against Texas, where Texas didn't really beat them on offense. That's the thing. Like, their defense held pretty solid against Texas. It was their offense and kind of special teams that let them down in that game. So when you have a great defense, you still have to give up points when the other team is whooping you in two phases of the game, is basically what happened there. And so that being said, I think you're exactly right, where all Mateer and the Oklahoma offense have to do is play them to a tie. But it's just so weird. This is the classic, September Heisman talk, where it's like, okay, they beat Michigan. Every year we think Michigan's awesome. We're wrong every year but one, basically. And so, but it's just been close enough to where we think, okay, Michigan's all this stuff. So after that game, and again, Wink Martindale, great coach. We're not taking that away from them. But after that game, it's like Mateer, Heisman favorite. And then everything since then feels like a disappointment. So that's why I frame it as, breakout game. But in reality, you're exactly right. Like, this time I'm the guy who's completely lost the narrative, where it goes, okay, all we needed out of this Oklahoma team was a mid-plus offense. All we needed out of this Oklahoma team was to be able to protect the football, capitalize on the defense, not embarrass you out there. And with a healthy quarterback, that's what they've done, right? And I think that, when they have struggled, there's been some schematic stuff, but it's mostly been Mateer's out there kind of not really playing like himself. He's just throwing the ball right to Texas, right? So that being said, yeah, I think the only point I was making there is that this is an Ole Miss defense that proved could be had if things are in phase for the offense. And I think that some of those strengths and weaknesses, right? Like, if you don't feel great about your ground game, you don't want to see a Pete Golding defense usually, because they can be a little bit blitz heavy. They can be a little bit tricky. But yeah, I'm with you here. I think that what a difference a week can make in the SEC, right? Where Ole Miss is flying high, they're undefeated in conference. They've just beat a good LSU team, and now suddenly it looks like that win isn't as shiny. It looks like Georgia has found a way yet again. So that being said, yeah, I'm right there with you. I think kind of a lower scoring game, but that type of game leads Georgia Oklahoma.
Could we not do the thing too, where if Ole Miss loses this game, people assume, oh, it's Lane being distracted with all the Florida talk. He's being rumored for this job, and it's just going to be 22 all over. Can we not do that? Because
Don't check the SDS Instagram this weekend, sweetie. You'll be in the wedding.
I know those dots are easy to connect. I know, but it's also going on the road and trying to beat a top 15 team that's got a lot of strengths, that has shown so far. And it showed last week. It can take advantage of weaknesses. That's the biggest thing that the OU offense has been trying to do. And it's been successful at doing that, is just show me you can take advantage of some weaknesses, or like when, Michigan gives you an open window to make a spectacular play like Mateer made a handful of times in that game. Can you do it? Can you step up and actually rise to the occasion? OU has shown to be capable of doing that so far. I think they win on Saturday. All right. Auburn, Arkansas. Arkansas is a 1-point favorite in this one. Auburn opened as a favorite, now an underdog, kind of similar to last week against Mizzou. The over-under is 0.5 snaps played by Ashton Daniels in this game, a.k.a. the Auburn backup quarterback, the Stanford transfer.
Hopium, ladies and gentlemen.
Is it? Do we count that? Is it hopium, Will?
At this point, they'll take whatever they got.
Yikes. Triple yikes. We're back to that conversation after Hugh Freeze talked about getting Daniels reps with the first teamers this week. Widely understood that this will be Jackson Arnold's last chance. TBD on if it's Hugh Freeze's last chance.
This is like Byron Hollywood. It's like Jackson Arnold's last chance strikes back. Like he'll get a third last chance somewhere else.
He will get, and by last chance, I mean last chance at Auburn. Jackson Arnold, I am fully of the belief he will be playing at least 5 years of college football at
You're so right.
several schools, and he will find a way to be able to become an FBS starter at least one more stop. If I'm guessing, that's the prediction for him.
He's going to pop up for Britt Key in Florida in like 3 years. We're like, oh my gosh, he's unlocked him just like Haynes King.
Whoa. Let's we don't want to upset too many people with something like that. Well, just keep that in mind. We'll settle for like Houston, a Connor Wigman situation. Okay, something like that. Who's balling, by the way. This is a huge opportunity for Jackson Arnold, obviously. And goodness gracious, if you can't have success against this Arkansas defense, which has allowed a minimum of 475 yards and 32 points the last 5 games, if you can't do it against them, it's not happening for you. It's just not. It's the ultimate low floor team. And to recap, that means Jackson Arnold is under pressure now, as in the quarterback who has been too afraid to cut it loose and too afraid to make mistakes. And meanwhile, Arkansas is on a free roll. Bobby P playing with house money. Odd that the man who is at the center of Jetgate is now coaching against Auburn. First time in a while that he's been doing that. Jetgate needs to get brought up every single time possible, but specifically in this matchup wherein Bobby Petrino is looking across at Auburn. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, go back to 2003 when Auburn thought that it could hire Bobby Petrino while it still had Tommy Tuberville employed, and thought that it could just fly to Louisville, meet with Bobby Petrino, have nobody hear about it, and then just fire Tuberville after the Iron Bowl, only to watch Tuberville win the Iron Bowl, have everyone found out that you did this, and then just look like the most inept organization possible. And Jetgate is kind of the perfect personification of like failed Auburn in the 21st century.
Hold on. The most inept organization possible so far. I think they would take that Auburn organization over today's 10 times out of 10.
Yeah. Embarrassing. Definitely embarrassing. Qualifies for that. Inept. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to consider it too inept. You're right. When 2004 happened and 2004 Auburn turned into what it was, kind of one of those blessing in disguises that Jetgate ended the way that it did for Auburn. But
all-time How Do You Like Me Now season.
Big time for Tommy Tuberville. The changes made on the offensive side of the ball was a big part of that. But yeah, while all that is happening back in 2003, Hugh Freeze coaching high school football. Love that when we can always have that type of side by side and just picture the high stakes one coach is partaking in the high school football that the other coach is partaking in. High school football is great, but that's who Hugh Freeze was for a very, very long time. If he loses this game, maybe his next job is coaching high school football. Maybe. I don't know. The question is, which one of these teams who cannot win a close game can actually maybe sort of win a close game? Well, do you know how bad these numbers are? 10 points or less?
I can't wait for this because I can kind of see it individually both these teams, but together, somebody has to win this game, Connor.
Auburn is 2-12 in games decided by 10 points or less under Hugh Freeze. In that same stretch, Arkansas is 4-13, do some quick math. These teams are a combined 6-25 in games decided by 10 points or less since the start of 2023. It's almost impossible.
This is like the opposite of the regular team. Like your team scores, they got it close. That's when you go to the restroom. You're like, okay, it's over with, guys. Call it a day.
Let's peace. Head to the parking lot. We're down 7. I'm getting a head start on traffic.
Nobody but me knows what's going to happen here. I'm out of here.
Yeah, seen this movie before. Don't need to see it again. That's torture for these fan bases, man. Absolute torture. Above all else, feeling like, oh, this is going to be a breakthrough win. You just can't sell yourself on it. So is this game going to be close? Maybe. Will both teams probably find ways to make you feel like they're going to blow it at the end? Probably. That's just the way that it's worked. I am very reluctantly picking Auburn, just because I think this is the best defense that Arkansas has seen, and they will be able to fluster Taylor Green. Auburn's offense will actually play with some urgency in the ground game, and I feel like I saw so many of those running lanes for Marcel Reed open up. I feel like that's going to be the case again for Jackson Arnold. It maybe will feel a little bit more like the Baylor game for Auburn. So they win 35-21, not a game decided by 10 points or less. Hugh Freeze gets another game, even though he probably shouldn't.
This is really just horseshoe theory personified, right? If you heard horseshoe theory, it's like two sides of the same issue end up being on the same side when they go far enough in their direction. This is like clinching versus releasing. Okay, on
Good
one
Lord.
side you have Hugh Freeze, who is just like you have Jackson Arnold, who's just scared to throw the football, scared to do anything. We have 3 play callers. We don't know what to do. Our kicker's hurt. This guy's well, we don't know. Oh, how do I still have a job? I'm thankful. Oh, like the field goal misses against Mizzou, and I'm like, I have no idea when something goes well for me what to do. On the other side, we got Bobby P. He's dressed like it's 2008. He's got sunglasses on. He's got Taylor Green. Got no defense, turning the ball over in ways that God never intended. Turning the ball, like, we might get a visor turnover in this game from Arkansas. And, of course, 2 coaches who have ridiculous scandals in their past. Bobby Petrino just took it on the face and went, hey, you know what? This is me. You hired Bobby Petrino. I'll do it again. Hugh Freeze, who has kind of lived in shame since then, say what you will, but he's kind of tried to, like, keep it behind the fence. Bobby P is like, I'm here. I'm making a run for this interim job. Whatever it is, boy, put your chips down. And so I'm actually really excited for this game. I think that fortune favors the bold overall, so I got to like Arkansas here. But it's just so clear to see how this game could go, right? If it works for Arkansas, or if it works for Auburn, it's an Arkansas turnover. If it doesn't, it's not. It feels almost simple in that way, whereas if Arkansas could run their offense like they did last week, which no small feat considering what they did last week against A&M, right? But if they could continue to play somehow mistake-free football or close enough to it, they would overwhelm this version of Auburn. It wouldn't be a close game, but their turnovers and their dumb plays and their horrible, poorly coached defense are how they might have a shot. I mean, you might just see somebody go completely uncovered and Jackson Arnold go, and throw a 10-yard pass that turns into an 80-yard touchdown. I can't wait for this game, but I'm taking Arkansas because it's going to be more fun that way.
Well, if you had to describe SEC football in the 21st century to someone who had never experienced it before, but you could only describe it through the lens of an SEC coach, would the 2 coaches that you would pick be Bobby Petrino and Hugh Freeze?
This is the spectrum right here, folks. This is everybody. You have wins against Alabama. You have scandals. You have highs. You have lows. You have trust. You have betrayal. This is the saga of the SEC.
They've experienced all of it. They've lived a full life in the SEC. You can't say like Nick Saban or something like that. It's like, oh, this guy that just came in and dominated. No. The full spectrum of SEC football. Bobby Petrino, Hugh Freeze, battling. Gosh, it's going to be a good one. This is going to be the one that I know with this game being early, when I get in the car and I'm just sitting there on YouTube TV and I'm watching, I'm like, oh God, this could go in a million different ways. And I'm not going to be surprised.
Bobby Petrino just attempted a field goal out here for Arkansas. What's going on? He nails it. It's a 40-yarder.
Oh, God. Hugh Freeze is just livid over there on the sideline. He's not eligible. Officials, how can you not see that? What are we doing?
He's got a cocktail napkin with number 1 on it pinned to his shirt. I'm so ready for this game. I mean, this is the most exciting SEC game of the year for me personally. This is Sicko's matchup of the year.
Dude, if Diego Pavia can get a million years of eligibility, we can let Bobby Petrino kick a field goal in a game of unranked teams.
Come on now. The NCAA is a joke at this point. Let the boys play.
Oh, gosh. All right. Number 4, Alabama, 12.5-point favorites against South Carolina. The over-under I have is
Mike
one and a
Schuler
half.
revenge game. Sorry.
Well, don't spoil the over-under like that. You
I'm
know what
so
you're doing.
sorry. Go ahead.
The over-under is 1.5 mentions of Mike Shula's Alabama tenure. Because of course it is.
I already almost hit it. I'm sorry.
This is the man responsible for Nick Saban. So Alabama fans, you need to welcome Mike Shula back with open arms, especially when you see his offense on Saturday. Saban was the first $4 million man in college football when he was hired at the end of the 2006 seasons, 2007, whatever you want to count it as. Will, do you want to take a guess what Mike Shula's annual salary was when he got hired to be Alabama's head coach in the wake of the disastrous Mike Price ending in 2003?
Okay, I'm gonna guess it's a funny number just based on that. I'm gonna say $800,000 to $1 million.
Did you look this up already?
No.
Okay. It's 900K.
Bang. How about that?
You nailed that one. Gosh, right in the middle. Yeah. Think about how much college football has changed. Wherein, 19 years ago, the Alabama head coach making less than $1 million. I mean, God.
I could hear like the WJOX at the time callers. That's $1 million man. He's making $1 million of my taxpayer money.
Dude, he could double that salary and like the full amount of it, the 6 years, 5 million, whatever it was. And that would have been at the bare minimum his buyout to go away. Like you just would have expected that at some point. Man, college
That's
football
actually
coaches.
like we talk about the big numbers now, but it's like we don't talk about the little numbers back in the day. How like these legendary coaches were like more or less regular dudes when they got outside of their college town. Like they were gods in their city, don't get me wrong, but you weren't out there competing. Like you weren't in the Drake parties like some of these guys are now, you know?
Man, the sport has changed very, very much in the last 2 decades. So what hasn't changed is that a lot of people still don't really like Mike Shula. And South Carolina's campus, I don't want to say that it hosted a full-on Mike Shula riot. It was definitely not that. It was a mild protest, we could call. Yeah. Let's just say 7 games into his tenure as South Carolina's OC, not going great. Not a great sign that that's the discussion surrounding Mike Shula right now. Also, not a great sign that you've got probably the most elusive quarterback in college football, and he's been under pressure on 47.9% of his dropbacks. Not ideal. Just for a little perspective on that number, because sometimes we can hear these things and we can just kind of dismiss it. 47.9% is a very, very high number to have in terms of pressured dropbacks. Garrett Nussmeier just faced the highest pressure rate of his career, and that was 43.3% at Vandy. Sellers is averaging more than that in a given week this season. He's like, buddy, you thought that was pressure? I expect that and then some on a given Saturday. Marcel Reed has a good offensive line. He's only been pressured on 23.6% of his dropbacks, roughly half as much as Lenore Sellers. Not fun. Not fun. Can't imagine what that's like. And he's still taking bad sacks because he's also going down on 25.3% of those pressures. Not good at all. All around, tough watch, tough hang for a guy that is not a tough hang and is really fun when he can actually get just a little bit of time. It's not asking for much. It's not asking for the world here. He doesn't need the greatest offensive line in the history of football to be blocking for him. But my God, it would help if at least one guy, 2 guys look competent on that offensive line. Ish. Well, there is nothing, and I mean nothing, about the 2025 sample size from these teams that suggests that this can be a close game. Because even if Mike Shula dreamt up this world in which, this is his Super Bowl, and he has Gus Malzahn basically pull the water boy move and just give him a notebook full of plays for this one, which maybe Gus would do it. Who are we kidding? Gus would do it.
Gus would do that. Yeah.
RP. He would. Give him a full game script for all I care. Don't even do the first 15 scripted. Give him the full game script. And regardless of down and distance, just run it. Just Mike Shula, trust that and don't trust yourself. I would still have zero confidence that South Carolina's ground game can actually sniff that when they're last in the SEC in rushing. They're not going to be able to pull the old Florida State thing, which is already viewed as like the biggest aberration of the season in terms of what Alabama looked like on that day, even though they've had issues defending the run. But here's what I wonder about. And I just have to ask this question because it has nothing to do with the 2025 sample size. I'm telling you that right now. You just have to ask this based on history and history alone. Is this the perfect time for a Shane Beamer special? Is it? Beamer has 6 wins at South Carolina as a double-digit underdog, none of which have happened this year. Kalen DeBoer might have heard this. Double-digit favorite on the road against an unranked team. That's been his kryptonite. Still 4-5 in games away from Tuscaloosa. I have praised the improvement of this Alabama team with this unprecedented 4-game stretch. Can you deliver a knockout punch if you're Alabama? Can you deliver that knockout punch to South Carolina? Or is South Carolina going to show up like this team that all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, is this 2022 Tennessee all over again? What in the world is happening? That's the only question I have about this one, because again, these two teams are not close together at all. I'm saying this one stays close way too long for Alabama fans to feel comfortable. Way too long. Maybe it's not full on 2010 Steven Garcia with the types of plays that are being made, but it's like kind of flirting with that a little bit. Low scoring. South Carolina's defense is relieved to finally face a running game that has been held to less than 4 yards a carry in all 6 power conference matchups this year. We haven't really talked about that as much. And on the flip side, there's relief in facing a team that has struggled to stop the chunk plays in the ground game. And maybe South Carolina kind of benefits from that. A Beamer ball score has Williams-Brice rocking, believing, maybe even like a 10-7 halftime lead for South Carolina. But too much Ty Simpson, and Bama still finds a way to win this one, 21-17.
So update, looks like Dylan Stewart is a go for this one. He's practicing, so it's obviously a big deal for South Carolina.
Recording this before injury reports that come out Wednesday night, by the way. Dylan Stewart dealing with the hip flexor issue. He was in and out of the game against Oklahoma last Saturday.
Yeah, but it looks like Beamer's saying he's already kind of been like cleared, full go, so that's a really big deal if you're South Carolina. When you say is this is a vintage Beamer game, I hear the beginning of Sandstorm playing in the back of my head. If this happened, where would you rank it in ridiculousness of Beamer games? Because the Tennessee one was wild, the A&M one was wild. Clemson was a little bit more expected at that point.
9.8 on a scale of 1 to 10, and the 0.2 that doesn't have it at 10 is only because he's done it before. Now, doing it during the day, maybe a little bit different.
3:30, not exactly a noon, right? I don't know. I mean, but I'm saying like rankings wise, would you put it above Tennessee? Would you put it above A&M last year? I think Tennessee is still number one, but because Tennessee was like
A&M, you could see coming. You could see some of that coming against A&M. Tennessee is still going to feel so unique, though, just because they did everything right offensively after they couldn't do a thing right at Florida the week before. I always bring up how that crowd at SEC Nation, like if I could give Marty, if I could give him the truth serum, and Marty and Ryan McGee as well, if they could let us know what was like a bottom 5 atmosphere that they've experienced on SEC Nation, I bet you they would say it was Columbia, South Carolina that day. Fans were over it at that point. So that one was way more out of nowhere. Now, when you're having protests on your campus with the OC, probably not a sign that your fan base is believing a whole lot. It's been a rough week. I think we're going to get to more of the Shane Beamer discussion with Brad Crawford, by the way, get into all the Virginia Tech stuff with him. So we don't have to discuss that here in the game preview, but it's been well documented that this season has just been basically a disaster post week 1. Week 1, great. Everything since then, not great at all. So it wouldn't feel quite as big as the Tennessee, but man, it'd be close.
So for those of you keeping score at home, I thought to myself, because you're right about Shula, and Shula is one of those things that it's almost like Bo Pelini, where it's like feels like you saw it coming a mile away. And like we talked about it in the offseason, I just made jokes and jokes and jokes because I'm like, if you're one of these old school coaches, like that's why I was so skeptical about Bobo in the beginning, and he showed some of that, guys. He really did. Where it's like I'm kind of stuck in my old ways. I think he is adapted for sure, but it's really hard for these coaches that have seen so much success to kind of come back and retool their games. And with Shula, I mean, he's been kind of in the coaching doghouse for what felt like 10 years, since he got that shot back in the day. Good.
In defense of Bo Pelini, how was he supposed to know Mike Leach was going to come out in the air raid and that he shouldn't play man defense in that spot? How was he supposed to know? Was there any sort of track record of Mike Leach to that point?
It's a good point. There's not a lot of tape on the Michael Leach offense. I've
So
never heard of Michael Crabtree in my life. I'll say that. That being said, I do feel like, me, you, and some dudes with high school football coaching experience could just run the air raid with Lenora Sellers and probably do better than Shula is doing. If you spread the other team out, just tell them to run forward. Feels like a pretty good strategy. I'm kind of baffled. It's one of those. Is this the coach's fault or is this the quarterback when you're taking that many sacks? All we can really say is it was a terrible fit. That's the best part is the quarterback was already there. The coach was, added or he was kind of promoted from within, whatever. But the decision was made on the quarterback before, the coach. So that being said, I do want to check in on, don't get mad at me for this, our friend Dowell Loggins. Now, I will say their offense is pretty pedestrian as well. So Shula is bad, okay? But it's the fact that was a good fit last year. That's all that matters here, folks, right? It's like, hey, it's not like last year they had an offensive mastermind. It was that they had a guy who fit the personnel. And we saw that with the A&M game where everything finally clicked with Rocket Sanders and all that. I don't know if that's coming this year for South Carolina. I don't know who the Rocket Sanders is that's waiting in the wings. I don't know who the shiny new thing that was Nick Harbor at the time or the tight end at the time kind of can be for this team. That being said, it is worth noting. I mean, it's easy to miss in the shuffle with those close games South Carolina had last year. That game was at Bryant-Denny, and especially getting behind like 14-0 the way they did South Carolina last year. How insurmountable that felt, and the way they were able to come back, and it felt like how with South Carolina you always go, how are they able to do that? I guess it was at home. No, that was on the road. So
true.
it's hard to. How about this? If this team doesn't show fight in this game, then we really start to ask questions because this is the side of the game that Beamer always gets up for. This is the Beamer special. Backs against the wall. We've talked about there are certain coaches that are better in that situation. That's certainly been Shane Beamer. I think Alabama still covers because, like I've kind of talked about, they do a good job of getting the insurance field goal to where they're not playing with fire in a one-score game at the end, which must be nice. But that being said, I think that it's a game that Alabama just gets a little quick turnover, field goal, boom, 3 points here, and just keeps it at 10. And then they just kind of hit the gas at the end. But I'm with you. I think it's a closer game than probably people would like, but it doesn't ultimately matter.
That Oklahoma game felt so unique for the Beamer era. Just did. It was, you talk about the type of game that typically he rises to the occasion for, and he can just, pull a rabbit out of his hat. And all of a sudden that team looks like it's playing with a different edge than it had, the previous weeks. And it just looks like, man, that's a team that's figuring it out. And I know that Josh Pate always likes to talk about Cocktober, but man, I think we got to put that to rest if they come out and just get walloped in this one, which is a very realistic possibility. And I'm saying it is the most realistic possibility that South Carolina loses this game 38-7. It's not particularly close because if you're going to get up for Bama, then why weren't you able to get up for Oklahoma? Because that team was still very much, in SEC title contention and still a team that in theory your guys should have been fired up to face. I don't know that you could pin that all on the Dylan Stewart injury, but yeah. And for those saying well, why can't, South Carolina do what it did last year? The very well documented turnover on defense is a big part of that. It's just it looks like a very different team. So yeah. Who knows though, man, if South Carolina pulls off the upset here, we know nothing. We just know nothing. Nobody's going to know nothing in the SEC, and just who knows how in the world we're going to get to Atlanta. We'll get there, but who gets there and what it looks like, anybody's guess. That would be on the table.
I'll say really quick, that game felt a lot to me like the Ole Miss game from last year, which is where a lot of people bailed out. And that was actually the week before Alabama.
True.
So
Good
they
point.
had the close loss to LSU. They smoked Akron. It was all right, let's see what you made of, Shane Beamer. And they got smoked against Ole Miss. And then it was you guys think we don't care anymore. Then they had the Alabama game. So I think actually it's kind of following the Beamer curve a little bit. I think we're both on a page here. I think this will be comfy, but they just don't have the horses. But this is looking like the Beamer special if they do.
Yeah. All right, number 15, Mizzou. Number 10, Vandy. Vandy's a 2.5-point favorite. College game day in the house. The over-under I have is 0.5 Mizzou rushing touchdowns in this one. Vandy's allowed 3 all year. One was Jam Miller with 17 seconds left to cover the spread in the Bama game. 2 others came in blowout road wins at Virginia Tech, at South Carolina. Therefore, zero rushing touchdowns allowed in 4 home games for Vandy. Mizzou tied for the national lead with 22 rushing scores, only half of which coming via Ahmad Hardy. Hardy has had a rough couple of weeks, albeit for different reasons. He wasn't as involved as Mizzou hoped in the Bama game, in part because Bama kept Mizzou's offense off the field, and also game script at the end when they fell behind 10, he wasn't going to be getting those rushing attempts down the stretch. Still felt like they left some carries, some opportunities for him out there, but
This is the why
nonetheless,
did we stop running the ball in the second half against Bama Bowl?
yeah, it kind of is. It kind of is for these two teams. Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Um, and the Auburn game for Hardy, DJ Durkin's defense did such a great job of gang tackling, meeting Ahmad Hardy at the point of attack. I was really, really impressed. That is such a solid Auburn defense, and they won that battle up front instead of allowing Hardy to get momentum in those slow developing zone runs. You actually had Kirby Moore trying to get Hardy looks in the gap runs, 12 of those. They don't really do that a whole lot at Mizzou. The last two games, Hardy has had more rushing yards after first contact than total rushing yards, meaning he's getting hit in the backfield way more, and he's having to make something of that. That's the first two instances of that happening to him in his career. That is not something that he has been necessarily a victim of, hey, I'm getting hit behind the line of scrimmage and I've got nowhere to go. I wonder how that impacts him, because the whole emphasis of Mizzou's ground game is you cannot press. You have to be patient. You have to use your vision to be able to understand where those running lanes are in that zone blocking scheme and how to attack them. That is what it is predicated on. It's what this entire offense is predicated on. That is nerdy football stuff, I realize, but it's such an important thing for someone who could be the best player on the field on Saturday.
Yeah, man, it's kind of unfortunate when game day picks a game like they did last week, because a game like this is when they should kind of keep coming back to the SEC, right? It's like two programs that I feel like are on the rise. I think that, would you say that both of these teams still have kind of hope in the SEC picture?
In the SEC title picture, no. In the playoff picture, obviously, yes, 100%. I would actually go as far as to say that the loser of this game still has very much a playoff path. If you look at the remaining schedule, it's not all of a sudden off the table. And I know that's going to be kind of the billing for this one, because it's two teams that don't have the historical success, who started off unranked. Mizzou shouldn't have started off unranked, yet they still did. And there will be this writing them off if they lose. And that's on the table. Like, I'm telling you right now, that's going to be the narrative. College game days in the house. We're both going to be hyping up both of these teams. And then all of a sudden, like, you suffer that second loss, and then you're just kind of out of sight, out of mind. That's for the SEC title picture, because both these teams obviously already have the loss to Bama. Bama's undefeated in conference play. But just in terms of the playoff picture alone, I would not be writing off the loser of this game, especially if it's close.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of an underrated thing, I think, as far as, okay, it really just used to be like every team was kind of competing for their conference, right? Like when you talk to coaches in media days, you're like, we want to compete in this conference, we want to win the championship. Like, that was a trophy that was really well valued around the country, because there were only two teams that had the opportunity to play for the Natty. So you could be a coach who won a ton of ACC or Big Ten championships and have like an awesome resume. And so I think that now that does give teams like this a lot more to play for, where it's like, hey, exactly to your point. And what it is that the top has refused to separate itself, right? These teams that have kind of stayed undefeated in SEC play, Alabama, A&M. And there's kind of that next tier where it's like the Georgias that have the loss.
8 total, Will. 8 total going into this weekend, with 0 or 1 loss in SEC play.
Yeah. And like, that's the thing. Like, I'm not dumping on either of these teams specifically. Like I said, I think Vandy is one of the best teams in the SEC. It's scary how high I would rank them in the SEC based on some of the things I've seen and how they play physically. Like, they are... Vandy has a case for the most physical team in the SEC. Who do you think is the most physical team in the SEC right now?
Ooh, that's a good question. It ain't Texas, that's for sure.
This ain't Texas.
I don't think it's a good song. I don't think you could say Alabama is that team, just because the lack of assert their will in the ground game. I would say I would put Mizzou up there. I'd put Vandy up there. I think both of those two teams have like a real case for it. You can't say LSU is, with their reluctance to run the football. Georgia's part of those conversations, but first part of the year, we were talking about the offensive line, played much better against Ole Miss.
When you give up that many touchdowns in a row. Yeah, A&M is another good one.
A&M probably wouldn't get the number one, though, on that, because, and we'll get to Cassius Howell, but their defensive lines at times has kind of struggled in, with some of those chunk plays, and they've been a little bit more vulnerable. But if you're, the point is, and I think this is the point you're trying to make, if you're asking that question, you have to include these two teams.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, you could say disrespectfully about Kentucky as well. They're too tough. But that
Yeah.
being said, I think, yeah, like that just is a test. So I'm not doing the pat you on the head, good job thing. I'm saying these are two of the toughest teams in the SEC. It just happens to be where the top is such a logjam that I think winning this game, I think, does matter a ton when it comes to, they're looking across the aisle at each other, and it's like, hey, we're trying to establish this brand of physically running the football, great offensive line play, which has kind of been a little bit of a lost art, great communication, some of the, option on one side. It's like a 2 or 3 headed rushing attack where like one side's going to attack you with a couple of guys and do some trickeration there. The other side is going to do true like pure triple option style stuff. So they're old school football teams at the end of the day, and I like Vandy here just because I think they have a little bit more of that. Maybe their talent is a little bit more hidden, and I think that I hate that it comes down to the quarterback as often as it does, but it's college football. At the end of the day, it matters. Like Pavia is just a little bit better than Purdue, and they do such similar things. You might get the ugly turnover here and there, but this is like another really awesome game it's the opposite of Auburn, Arkansas, where it's like both of these teams are achieving their objectives, and I'm excited to see them play. I'm going to take Vandy here to cover, but I think to your point, Mizzou's season would not be over by any stretch at that point.
Yeah, if you aren't interested in this matchup because they're not big enough brands for you, you don't like college football, and just watch something else. That's fine. If you actually watch what these teams do and watch the way that they play, watch the things that they do well, this matchup's awesome. It's so great. And I have no problem whatsoever with College Game Day being there. Two teams that I think, been at the forefront of defending when people have dismissed them. And I realize I just dismissed their chances to win an SEC championship. I think the Bama loss complicates it with them so very much locked in for one of those spots at this point in the season. But look, you're right. Diego Pavia, it changes everything. It changes everything. He shredded a very respected LSU defense, albeit one without Whit Weeks. Nobody's talking about the Mizzou defense either. Nobody. Only one game this year with 4 yards per carry allowed, and it was against Louisiana, and they only got there because they had an 84-yard touchdown run in that game. It was in the midst of a 35-3 second quarter, whatever. Louisiana also had a 2 for 14 passing day for 4 yards. So whatever, they gave up one play. This unit can beat you in a variety of ways. And I think Zion Young, Damon Wilson II, like, they've been heating up quarterbacks all year. And maybe finally people are starting to come around to that, starting to recognize that more so. Zion Young was awesome in that game against Auburn. They can be a little bit vulnerable on the back end when they don't get home, though. And they basically can struggle against a quarterback who can keep his eyes downfield, not panic, and make plays. Basically be the anti-Jackson Arnold, kind of the inverse of that.
Mm-hmm.
Easier said than done. But I think Diego Pavia can be that dude. And it's not to say that he's just going to rip them apart all day, but I can't bet against Diego Pavia at this point. Like, you just can't. And as much as I love this Mizzou defense, I will continue to praise Josiah Trotter, who I just think is so underrated. I love Hardy. I love the bounce back late that Prbula showed. Kind of lost in the shuffle of that Auburn game. Was like, he was really kind of scuffling down the stretch, and they were able to kind of turn some things around. Thought he showed a lot of toughness, being able to respond in ways that he didn't against Bama the previous week. Vandy's a freight train. Vandy's a freight train. Don't deny it at this point. Lean into it. Accept that this is a really good football team that is brutal to play against for 60 minutes. And if you get out with a win against them, you feel fortunate. Bama fans, in their heart of hearts, they're going to say, oh, yeah, it was Vandy. It was whatever. Bama fans, they were sweating that out. They were sweating that out. The final score is not going to be indicative of it because of the 17 seconds left when they scored that touchdown. But this is a tough out. And I think for Mizzou, this is a tough out going into their building. And I have Vandy winning this one. Another top 15 team that you're hosting as a home favorite. And I think they win another one by a touchdown, 28-21. And it's just more praise for Diego Pavia.
Right there with you. And this should be a pretty short game, too, with all the carries.
Probably. Vandy, I think Vandy's going to try and stretch the field a little bit. I think they would really try and prefer to stretch the field. Again, difficult when you have those edge rushers that Mizzou has for sure. But I think they would like to be able to try and take some of those shots downfield and try and get going that way instead of just leaning on the run, which has been really successful for them. All right. Number 22, Texas, 7-point favorites against Mississippi State. The over-under I have is 1. Count it, 1. Texas offensive touchdown. Yeah, that's where we're at, Will. That's where we're at, man. Like, that's what they've had in 3 of 4 power conference games, all of which have been away from home. In the one game that they didn't have just one offensive touchdown, they were stuck on one offensive touchdown late in the third quarter at Florida, where they still lost to a team that fired their coach 2 weeks later. So they fired their coach after beating this Mississippi State squad that Texas will see on Saturday. This Mississippi State team is more than capable of frustrating the most casual team in college football. That is the Texas Longhorns. Michael Taft wanted media members to smile after the OT win at Kentucky, claimed that the media was being too negative about the Texas offense.
That felt like AI. I sent that to you. That felt like not real. After everything that kind of we had said about them, like, are you sure you want to flex right now? It's like after that win against Kentucky, it's like, you guys should be nicer to us. It's like, buddy, you have a hard road ahead of you.
Yeah, and I get what he's doing. If I'm just looking at this from a Texas locker room standpoint, I'm glad that somebody like that came out, because it beats the alternative of saying, like, our offense sucks. We're doing all the heavy lifting. You don't want that divide. And
he's probably trying to play the villain to get the eyes off of Arch Manning, which is probably smart. Good teammate move.
He's sitting up there. They're both number 16. They're both sitting up there addressing the media as he's saying this. And they don't always do that, by the way. Like against Florida, they were individually coming up there. There was like 6 players that came up afterwards. So I don't know why specifically that game. Maybe that's the reason. You're just trying to take some heat off your quarterback. Makes a lot of sense. But he basically said that, well, look at Georgia last year. Georgia went into Kentucky and struggled, and Georgia went on to win the SEC championship. Texas won. Texas should be happy. Media should be happy too. That's not the media's job. He doesn't need to know that, but whatever. I struggle with this because does he think that Georgia just didn't get any criticism after that? Does he think that this is just picking on Texas? Because it's not. You're both preseason number 1. You both came in with a decorated preseason Heisman Trophy favorite as your quarterback. Nobody's saying it's easy to win in the SEC, but buddy, when you gain 179 yards of offense and you have 8 first downs, when you're already a 2-loss team, and last year Georgia was not a 2-loss team going into that Kentucky game. It was their first SEC game. You're going to get criticized for it. When you look like you still lack urgency and you are still so casual, you get criticized for it. When you're going into the final Saturday of October and you've only had one power conference game with multiple offensive touchdowns, you get criticized for it. You got an offense that's getting paid millions of dollars. We don't need to get into the exact dollar amount, but this offense is well paid and it is not good. It's bad. It's real bad. And the irony, Will, is that a lot of the Arch hype that cited that was at least willing to cite the 2024 sample size, which I was partaking in that as well, was surrounded by plays that he made in the Mississippi State game last year, which is his first career SEC start. He had 358 yards of offense and 3 touchdowns in this game last year. Will, that would be the most stunning result if that repeated itself on Saturday, right? Like that would be, if that happened, we'd be like, oh my God, they haven't done that all year. This is the best game they played.
Career game, yeah.
Right? Like, if you look at games versus power conference competition and see where the Texas offense stacks up against the rest of the SEC, so we're just including power conference competition here. This is where they rank among SEC. 16 teams in the SEC, for those who've forgotten, including you, Tom Fornelli, not 18 teams in the SEC, only 16. Texas offense, 15 in scoring, 13th in yards per play, 15th in passing yards per game, 15th in rushing yards per game, 10th in third down conversion rate, 11th in red zone touchdown percentage, 15th in time of possession, 11th in 20-yard scrimmage plays, and dead last, 16th of 16 teams in the SEC with just 6 contested catches. What do they do well? Anything? They don't play with urgency. They don't play on schedule. They look overwhelmed on the road. And now they're going into another hostile atmosphere. Go ask your Peach Bowl friend, Arizona State, what it's like to go into Starkville. You can't just have 7 smattering cowbells and assume that everything's going to work out just fine and that you're going to be ready for that atmosphere when you've got people like Ryan Wingo coming out after the Florida game being like, oh yeah, Swamp was a little loud. You think?
Huh. They really get up for these football games in the SEC. This is crazy.
This is tough. This is hard. Yeah, we've been telling you that. We've been telling you that for 4 years. What do you think? You were just going to show up and dominate? That's not how this works, man. Anyways, I'm frustrated watching Texas. You can tell. Mississippi State, they held Sam Leavitt 82 yards passing. Arizona State at 4.5 yards per play. That would, if Arch had that script, that's less surprising than if he followed last year's script of 358 yards of offense and 3 touchdowns. Bulldogs are tied for the SEC lead in takeaways. They're first in interceptions. I think Brylan Lanier, who picked off DJ Lagway twice and had that big sack on third down, I think he gets a pick 6 off Arch. I think it's the difference in a low-scoring game. I'm picking Mississippi State to win this one, 17-13. Casual Texas gets its third loss. Michael Taff, not going to be addressing the media because he's not playing in this one because he's dealing with the thumb injury. But Texas does not ultimately get to the college football playoff, and it looks back on a game like this wherein it thought it could show up and win as the reason why.
Him having a thumb injury was a piece of that context that I'd missed in the shuffle, which is very funny because it's like he's now talking crap and not able to back it up. So that takes away my villain arc thing a little bit because you're just putting the heat on your teammates at that point if you can't come out there and take the licks for it. Connor, I'm going to call this the we missed the Big 12 showdown, right? Let's look at the 2023 season. Got Jeff Lebby at Oklahoma. Oh my gosh, offensive genius, 4th offense in America, scored almost 42 points a game. You look at Texas, Sarkisian's best offense. Oh my gosh, we're so ready for the SEC. We got the offensive side of the ball figured out. We're rocking and rolling. We got Quinn Ewers, we got Dylan Gabriel. We'll always have this figured out. And then you fast forward and you look and you got 2 teams that just cannot move the football.
Cannot
at all. And to the point where like their defenses are awesome because they're used to just getting the juice off of the offenses in practice. They're like, hey, we're defensive units. We're smash mouth football. Like we're gonna have to win the games however we can. Not gonna be Venables and say, okay, well, this is the old Big 12 or whatever. Because the difference is like Texas was dominant in that Big 12. But that being said, I don't think that these 2 coaches fundamentally changed. I hope. We'll see how the rest of this year plays out. Let me not get ahead of myself. But, I don't think I've seen enough out of Sark, given his long tenure as a play caller, for him to give up play calling duties just yet. I just think Arch Manning's not any good. I think that this is just not a good fit, kind of like we've talked about. If you can extract what you were able to extract out of that offense last year when your line's banged up, your quarterback's banged up, your running back stable is like second, there's just like anybody could play running back at some points in that year. Nobody is healthy, and yet they're able to do things they're able to do last year. But that being said, this is a team that is just completely listless, and they're in one of the most unique situations. And again, I hate to make it all about quarterback, but in Texas, it really is. If they had a mid quarterback in the system that knew he was mid and they could scheme around, they kind of saw that last year. They saw a cerebral, older veteran quarterback who didn't have the arm strength, wasn't super mobile, but was able to run the system. It feels like every play is what would Evil Bob Ross called this an unhappy adventure. It's like you snap the ball and you're like, you don't know where your guys are. If the guy's open, the ball's going to go over his head or his feet in these weird angles we haven't seen. To your point, it's casual, right? And you'd think after a game like the game against Kentucky, that would kind of wake you up. But I liked what I saw at Mississippi State kind of all year, man. And again, I'm not trying to give guys like pats on the back or whatever. But that win against Arizona State is real. Arizona State appears to be a pretty good team this year. And Mississippi State has been so close in so many of these games. And again, at some point, losing one-score games becomes your DNA. And they've not had excuses to, even let the A&M game get away from them the way that they did, right, in these big moments. Like, I'm not out on Jeff Lebby by any stance, but I say that to say this is a prime opportunity. Mississippi State should have beaten Florida last week.
Yes.
That was a swamp win. We talked about it, right? That big boy getting that pick made me so happy and jolly. It was such a great ending to the Billy Napier career of here's something that you didn't do at all, that when you have a football game, you did enough to lose this game over and over again, and yet somehow they threw it right to this big boy, and now you're safe for 2 hours. And so that being said, I'm right there with you, man. I think Mississippi State can at least cover, if not win this game. I think it's a big time wake-up call for Texas, hopefully, but they're allergic to looking in the mirror, so maybe they'll just take away media availability and start living in the basement somewhere if they lose this game and just double down.
You don't want to go all in with me? You don't want to go all in and call the upset with me?
No, I think they will. I'm saying they will at minimum cover, if not win this game. Yeah, let's do it.
It's not calling the upset.
Okay, let's call the upset. I take State here to get their first SEC win.
Let's go. It'd be first in 2 years. It'd be a humbling moment for this Texas team. By the way, we haven't talked about. I made the joke after the Arizona State game where I was naming the guys on Mississippi State's defense, and I was actually not naming those guys. I was just naming guys from my high school baseball team.
Now they're in the PFF stats. Look at this.
Brylan Lanier. We need to be talking about him because this is someone who is a Tuscaloosa native. So naturally he starts his career off at Alabama in 2021, then doesn't play, goes to Indiana in 2022. He's a reserve, goes to East Mississippi Community College in 2023, aka the original Last Chance U, plays well enough there to be able to garner interest from Mississippi State, the new look defense in 2024, which we knew they were just searching for bodies last year. I mean, it was so much turnover. And now he's a multi-year starter who is heading towards an all SEC season, or at least he should be. He has become a do-it-all guy in this defensive backfield. And if you're wondering, like, why Mississippi State, this defense is suddenly 22nd in the country in opposing quarterback rating, and why this unit actually looks competent in ways that it didn't last year, look no further than a guy like Lanier. Like, he's kind of at the center of this, and he could be one of those guys that by day's end, people are like, oh my God, this guy's like making plays all over the place. He's been making plays kind of all year for them. And Mississippi State is not the doormat that so many people think they are.
He, of course, went to Paul W. Bryant High School.
Right. I'll be honest, like when I saw like where he was from, I was like, oh, surely this is going to be the most Alabama high school name ever. And yes, it was.
Yep. I love that. Like, it's just so like monolithic where it's like, yep, this is what we do here, folks.
Yep. Lean into it. All right. Texas A&M, number 3, Texas A&M, 2.5 point favorites against number 20 LSU. The over-under I have is 3 Cassius Howell sacks. Yep. Tyree Adams, the LSU left tackle, he is out. You're shaking your head. You know
it couldn't be worse, honestly. I mean, that's the thing. That's the cool thing about bad offensive linemen getting hurt. It's like, hey, at least we get to see somebody new.
Did it get better in that game?
It couldn't get worse. That's the cool thing. They can't hurt me anymore, Connor.
Yeah. I already talked about how much pressure Nussmeier saw in the Vandy game. Cassius Howell leading the SEC in sacks. He has already had 2-3 sack games this year. He is the game wrecker that so many teams lack. And it's not even just the sacks. He leads the SEC in pass rush win rate, pressures, hurries. He's basically Shamar Stewart, except he actually tackles the quarterback. That's he can do everything except he can't sack the quarterback. Well, you'd like somebody that could do that. Cassius Howell.
It's like the understood you. It's like the threat of him actually creates the pressures and turnovers. Look at this.
Yes, just seeing him out there on the practice field counts as one pressure for Shamar Stewart. Little bit different with Cassius Howell. The 61.4% adjusted completion percentage under pressure for Garrett Nussmeier. It's around league average, and the same with a 14.1 pressure to sack percentage. Those are okay. Those are fine. It doesn't make you think he's a total liability back there once it kind of heats up. This is a guy that's seen pressure at points in his career. But what I worry about is that LSU is going to make it known how badly they want to keep him out of harm's way. Again, you can tell me the oblique, the ab strain, whatever, it's fine. We still see him limping every single time he gets up and he gets knocked down, okay? I think this LSU offense is going to have too many of these quick hitting pass attempts, and some of these plays are going to feel like a sack with what they're doing behind the line of scrimmage, and all of a sudden they're in 3rd and 12, and you're like, well, they got no chance of converting this. And it's going to feel a lot like Ole Miss, where they recognize that LSU wasn't even going to be willing to run the football, and then they just drop 8 in coverage, and suddenly you're like, I guess we can get home with 3 every once in a while, and we have enough guys to help us in coverage. We don't even have to worry about defending the run. We're fine. Maybe Mike Elko, who has a spicy relationship with his former boss, Brian Kelly. Call that. That sounds a little bit
Two spicy gentlemen, really. 2 guys that, no matter how their relationship ended, would have found a way to hate each other by now.
2 guys that maybe Steve Sarkisian needs to be included in this. But we have the conversation of like, who would you least want to see if you have messed up? Like coming to the sideline where you're just going to get dog walked and it's going to be bad. Elko and Kelly probably lead the way. Sark, maybe not so much on the sideline unless you're a security guard, but I think those 2 would probably be the leader in that discussion, right? Bobby Petrino, interim, for including interim coaches, would be up there, but that's probably the 2 that I would just be like, oh my God, put my head down, go to the bench. A lot of yes sirs, not going to push back. just let this happen.
Yeah, you know me as a laugh under pressure guy. That's the worst kind of guy to be around guys like that. Because like guys, sorry, dude, sorry. It's like, oh, okay, I'm under the stadium now. I can't see the light. This is crazy.
Well, I think you'd be out of the county.
Fired out of a cannon, yeah.
Golly. Elko blasted his defense after the Arkansas game. He handed out the weekly awards, but didn't give any to the defensive players because he said none of them earned it.
Fair. You know what? Love it.
Love it. They got an adult in the room. I think everybody's kind of come to that conclusion of Mike Elko, say what you will about him. He seems like an adult who gets it in a lot of different ways. I don't totally agree with his pushback of the media's coverage of college football coaches. He got that was a little bit of a tough look for a guy that was saying, I don't know why people are saying I'm leaving Duke, and then he ends up leaving Duke for A&M. We don't need to go down that road necessarily as it relates to this game. Well, I'm going to make a not so bold prediction and say that Cassius Howell earns an A&M Defensive Player of the Week honor, maybe an SEC Defensive Player of the Week honor. 4 sacks he has in this one. A helpless LSU offense. Marcel Reed, who follows the Diego Pavia lead against this LSU defense, which may or may not have Whit weeks. Again, we're recording this before injury reports come out on Wednesday night. TBD on all of that. Didn't seem like Brian Kelly was too willing to dig into that. Maybe he's having some gamesmanship. Maybe he just doesn't want to talk about Whit weeks anymore. I don't know. A&M, I think, gets to 8-0 for the first time since 1992. A road team wins this game for the first time since the Kevin Sumlin era. That's right. A&M 28, LSU 20, and it's like a last minute touchdown for LSU where they're like stuck on 13 points, and it's even worse than that final number suggests.
Yeah, so the latest update, again, injury reports still haven't come out, but it's that everything says that Weeks is still in the walking boot. Not what you want to hear for a guy to suit up. Let's put it that way. Maybe he has some type of a football coach gaslighting thing where he breaks out of the walking boot a la hospital bed on Saturday, but I don't think things are looking very good for him. And we saw, just how critical he was last week. The criticism has been made of several good teams in the SEC. Oh, they struggle against mobile quarterbacks. And I think you just said about Oklahoma that they don't. And I would say Oklahoma's probably about the only team in the SEC that doesn't. And I thought about that kind of during the game on Saturday. Maybe it was through my rage that I thought about it this way. But I was like, hey, if you really think about it, like in modern college football, that's just like saying a defense struggles against like a running or a receiver who, can catch, or like a running back who's fast. It's like just an extra thing. It's not like, oh, we have a mobile quarterback and therefore we play this way. It's like in modern college football, it's more like, hey, we have this offense and a mobile quarterback, right? Which is exactly what Texas A&M has. It's exactly what LSU lacks. I'll say it like this, though. I will disagree with you on the LSU part of it, because I would argue that Brian Kelly's stubbornness in not admitting how injured that Nussmeier has been is a big part of the reason why we're here, in that I wish he would scheme Nussmeier like a guy who was hurt. I wish he would scheme Nussmeier like a guy who's a one read and dump it off kind of a guy. But if you look at the fact that his pressure rate went up so much last week, or it was kind of like high last week, and the fact that he had a good game, Brian Kelly is openly taunting opposing defenses during the off week, going, we got to make you respect the run to where you send more pressure, because when you go in to drop 8, that's when we struggle. He's basically daring defenses to blitz his hurt quarterback. And that scares me as an LSU fan who has seen Garrett Nussmeier be healthy and try to, I don't know, take off in a Florida game where it ends up with an Emory Jones carry, right? And so that's kind of the funny thing about Nussmeier, is that like where they've struggled has almost been not against pressure. It's been against that drop 8 that Kelly keeps talking about. And it's almost like he's going to go out there and give him carries, make him, tote the rock, scramble, take all these dumb hits. And I think we're going to arrive at the exact same conclusion here, where this is the game where it ends up biting him in the butt. Go ahead.
You know what it is? It's the defense that shifts and the guy that just tries to bunt against the shift. Like that's what he's trying to do, essentially. And like with when Nussmeier is willing to actually scramble, which is very few and far between still. But that's kind of what it feels like when that happens. You're like, oh, Pete Crow Armstrong is putting a bunt down the third base line when there's 2 strikes on him. Interesting.
There's 3 guys lined up waiting for it. Exactly. Yeah. No, you're exactly right. It's almost like we see how hurt Nussmeier is and how bad he looks out there, but it's like Kelly is so stubborn that he doesn't want to admit he was wrong, and so he's just like, yeah, it's fine. It's Jaden Daniels out there. Let's do a little read option with our line that can't block. And so, yeah, like I said, I think we end up arriving at the same conclusion, which is like, this is a defense that can do both. This is a defense that doesn't have to send a ton to create pressure. This is, to your point about like the injury situation with Adams, they don't need to, load the box against this LSU team to find success. That's the horror show that Brad Kelly, I think, is not really thought about in his mind. That in his mind, it's, oh, you drop 8 or you send a blitz and get pressure. In this game, it could be, you drop 7-8 and you still get pressure, and that's what's so scary about this A&M defense. When you got the guys like Tori, what's his name, Torian.
Torian York.
Yeah, Torian York. There's too many Torians in sports, I'm realizing. Anyway, Torian York is like shaping up to be one of, if not the best linebacker in the SEC, who can kind of just, all you really got to do is put that guy on quote unquote LSU's running game and it's done. You could just neutralize that with one player because there's not a commitment to it. It's a very scared running game that kind of slow develops and like does all this stuff. So it's not like you really even got a scheme for that. So yeah, I think that LSU weirdly offensively feels like they're getting a little bit healthier despite the Adams stuff, but on defense that's been where they've hung their hat. And I think that we've seen this is the game where the Blake Baker defense really just fell off a cliff last year against Marcel Reed, who wasn't even a full-time starter. We joked about it. He had 2 pass attempts and just smoked LSU. Again, I don't think this is a quote-unquote Blake Baker defense that struggles against running quarterback. I think it's just a dang good A&M offense, and that's a tool. With Pavia, same deal. They did a great job, I think, schematically, but then he was able to out-physical them, out-talent them in a way that Sellers wasn't. So I say that to say I really want to pick an LSU upset here, man. I really do, because it would be so funny. God, it would be so funny. But I think
they'd be a top 3 team, just with everything that's been said the last week.
And LSU fans would be furious. That's the best part of it. They would be so mad because that would be, they've already told themselves Kelly's out the door. At this point with the Kelly thing, I think we should just get it over with. I was joking with you off air. It's like, they're the best team in America if they win these next 2 weeks. They're not going to do it. I think they certainly need to go 1-1 at least for Kelly to not feel like he's going to get carried out of Baton Rouge. And I think this is a much more winnable game than Alabama at Bryant-Denny. This is a game that Kelly historically has won. It's a night game, at Tiger Stadium.
Only one loss in that setting.
Yeah. So I would say something's got to give, but we see these coaches, where their seats are heating up, where things are starting to slip away from them. It's these streaks that start to get ended. It's okay. Well, I get my home base. This is where I've proved all the haters and doubters wrong. We talked about that with Beamer a little bit earlier. Especially if the team looks as lazy as they have and undisciplined as they have at home, and they get kind of embarrassed in this game, could be the start of something really rough for LSU, I think.
The problem with relying on that atmosphere to create an advantage for you, which it's still Death Valley at night. I'm going to need to see that place clearing out 2020 COVID levels for me to not assume that that's some sort of an advantage for you. The problem is that when things go wrong with this team that has already had many things go wrong, you look up at that advantage and instead you see a fan base that's just bummed out about this team.
That's the thing. If they go 3-and-out early a couple of times, they'll be in an away stadium because those fans will be so upset at Brian Kelly that they'll be actively rooting on their own team's downfall, and it becomes a negative.
That start is pivotal, man. It's really, really pivotal. Talk about why Florida was able to create that type of atmosphere against Texas. Well, it's because Florida showed up ready to go in that one. And Florida had a great opening script. Florida was ready to go on both sides of the ball, and they got that crowd engaged. And when you're a team that has struggled already to this point, you don't want to give your fans reasons to doubt you and to not want to be, as wild as Baton Rouge on a Saturday night can be. And I just question that they'll be able to do that. I think the optics of this, they were bad losing to Vandy. We talked about how much that just took away from what this LSU team is trying to accomplish. But watching A&M with a year 2 coach, a former Kelly assistant, winning your building, something that A&M has not done in forever. That to me is kind of going to be just more ammo to why this Kelly thing won't end up working out. And I've had to come around to that reality. I still think it's more 50-50 that he survives and gets a year 5 than some will admit, but TBD on how this goes. And if it falls apart and this LSU team is all of a sudden just off the rails bad in the next month, then of course those discussions are going to be had.
Yeah, if we get a year 5 for Brad Kelly, you, the listener, are the winner here, because nobody was better than me when LSU was horrible when we first started doing this. And I was just every week dumping on LSU to the point where people were like, are you even an LSU fan? So, yeah, I will hate that if that happens. But, boy, will you, the listener, be the winner. But, yeah, I think this is going to be a pretty rough one for LSU.
Also, potential bet on the line for my LSU national championship bet. If A&M beats LSU in this game for loss number 3 for LSU, I won't make it official until the season ends. But we could very much look back on this and go, well, A&M doesn't have to hear a single negative word from me all offseason. They would essentially become the All Bang the Drum team from me on the
and
show.
There's a lot to like. They're undefeated. They've gone out of conference to do all these great things. They're a really well-coached team. They have a lot of talent. Must be nice.
All right, well, let's end with number 17, Tennessee, 9.5-point favorites against Kentucky. The over-under I have is 35 Tennessee points. That's what the Vols have averaged in 4 wins against Kentucky during the Heupel era. He has his number. Does falling to 0-5 against Josh Heupel and falling to 0-5 in SEC play this year, does that mean that we have finally reached the end of the Mark Stoops era in Lexington? That's the question I'm asking going into this one. I'm already counting this a loss for Kentucky. I just am. Kentucky fans are too. It's just, what is it going to look like? How is it going to play out? How is it going to feel in that moment? The timing of that streak is interesting. And I think it speaks to a bigger picture issue with Stoops and the angst that Kentucky fans rightfully feel. I remembered how shocked I was that Tennessee came into Lexington in 2021, year one of the Heupel era, and beat a Kentucky team that was considered vintage Stoops. Like a Kentucky team that went on to win 10 games that year was in the midst of a 3-game losing streak, but still, this was like a 45-42 shootout wherein Tennessee had a pick six. And I talked about how much the Alabama game was the coming out party for the Josh Heupel offense in 2021, which was the previous game for Tennessee. This game, though, was when I thought, oh, that's interesting because Kentucky never looks like that defensively, at home at least. And this confirmed that Tennessee's offense was going to be for real. That's the problem for Kentucky and for Mark Stoops. This program had a really nice head start at the beginning of the decade with what they had working in their favor with an identity, feeling like you're modernizing the offense. It was willing to spend in the portal. Stoops got his indoor facility. And yet, despite all of this, too many new coaches have come into the SEC and run laps around Kentucky. Heupel, Lee, Beamer, Drinkowitz, Kiffin, all came into the SEC at the start of the decade, either in 2020 or 2021. And I think all of them, you could argue, had significant rebuilds. And yet Stoops looks overmatched against all of these guys. All of them. You don't trust them to be able to game plan, out scheme those guys. And like even Kiffin, who he's been kind of back and forth with, you still don't trust them to be able to win a game down the stretch. Heupel was tasked with rebuilding his entire offense this offseason. They've even gotten more diverse with the route running, which has been scrutinized. It's like, hey, they're a little bit too basic. This is why the receivers struggle in the NFL. They adapted. And while last week at Alabama was disappointing, Tennessee still is the number 3 scoring offense in America. And Kentucky, meanwhile, is still trying to sell us that Bush Hamdan is figuring things out, or he's really close to it. When he's been the OC for 13 games against power conference competition, he has yet to hit 24 points, Will.
Such a classic Boomer move where it's like, fine, you want me to keep an OC? Here you go. I kept him.
Cool. You feel good about your development of your young quarterback. That's all well and good. Hit 24 points in the year of our Lord 2025. Just once against a team that is in Eastern Michigan. Golly, it's bad. Stoops can make all the excuses he wants. He can tell everyone he's going to fix it. He can tell everyone he's motivated. I don't care. Cats are broken. Perhaps a cat with 9 lives finally gets put out of its misery at the hands of the Josh Heupel offense. Tennessee wins this one 35-14. The only question is whether or not Mark Stoops gets another game.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think I've said this before. The worst thing you can be in sports and what is fundamentally an entertainment industry is boring. I think.
Yep.
Now, last week Kentucky was interesting, but they again played their kind of one game. Had some how do you like me now opportunity. Didn't really come to fruition. So that being said, we usually know what happens after this, especially against a team like Tennessee, who exactly to your point, they've been more diverse offensively. I think a lot of that comes to having a quarterback who can really truly move the pocket. And we talked about the route trees. I think there is more advanced progression. Now, again, when you're comparing yourself to Nico and Joe Milton, that's very easy to do, right? But that being said, I think a lot of that comes from when you move the pocket. Guys have to kind of like play schoolyard football and invent routes a little bit. And that's exactly what Aguilar can create. So you start within this scheme that can be a little bit like too rigid, and then you break free and guys get their chemistry going. And so it's like, now you really got to defend 2 offenses with the same play. It's like, oh, I prepared for this, like strict, everybody follow your rules. Oh, now it's completely different. And this guy went left and this guy went right. So yeah, I think that Kentucky just doesn't have the horses for this. And I think, like I said, it's just not super interesting. I hope they prove me wrong. I hope they make it. I'd rather watch more good football, unless we got 4 games on and one's on ESPN News, right? But I think 3.5 good games is what my ADHD brain can process and know what's going on. But that being said, like I said, don't think it's that interesting. I think Tennessee rolls, and I think again Tennessee is a pretty recession-proof brand. Not recession-proof, There's always that little bit of chaos. It's like you saw that protest too with the baseball coach Fratello.
I don't want to. By the time people are listening to this, maybe there's been more of an what's the right way to say this?
Developments,
More
breaking news.
developments. Sure, we'll
Yeah,
call them developments on that campus of what
Fratello's
has
at the
happened.
campus Starbucks. He's ordered a
Right.
venti macchiato.
I don't want to cold take myself
Yeah.
on that discussion, but yes, saw it very much. How do the more things change, the more they say the same. Tennessee
Tennessee
fans
fans.
protest, craziness on campus. What else is new?
They're like werewolves, every once in a while they got to get out and howl and like create some chaos, and their football team has been like too good. Like it's like they got too much stability in their lives, so they got to go do that. No, but again, that just goes to show that's what they were known for, is chaos. I think that we could talk about Danny White right now, and that's actually where I was going with that, is that, hey, maybe your fan base is mad at Danny White right now, but I think that's what he's brought to Tennessee, is like a lot of stability, maybe adult in the room style stuff, where you're not chasing guys down in the street saying, please, here's a blank check, da da da, like they were, in previous administrations. So I think this is just a floor game for Tennessee, where it's like, hey, we really don't even care about this rivalry anymore. We're going to smoke you and move on.
It's very hard for me to acknowledge. This is going to sound bad. It's very hard for me to acknowledge that life outside of college football exists on Saturday. Again, I talked about how I'm trying to be present on Saturday at my very good friend's wedding, and there are very few things that can happen in the sports world that can actually make me go, wait a minute, what? That isn't college football related. Seeing roughly 7, 8, 9 tweets in a row about Tony Vitello and the Giants job on Saturday was one of those moments. And we were like, huh? What? what in the world is going on? They caught everybody off guard with that.
The seamless transition to LSU baseball season, as I was watching Vandy just smoke my team, and I looked out and Vitello's going, all right, it's baseball season now, boys. Let's run it back. We're going back to back. But yeah, hey, we're talking baseball here. That's the biggest compliment we can do to your team, Tennessee.
Yeah, plenty of SEC fan bases, I bet, will be hoping for positive baseball developments more than positive football developments in the next few months. I realize the season hasn't started. I know baseball, guys. I know baseball. I totally do. All right, fade of the week. If you are fading,
I was so close to tweeting you from the SDS account during the Miami game.
dude, weird things are happening with this, man. Just weird things. You should have some sort of action on whatever game I'm picking here. I can't really tell you what it is at this point. But if you're fading, apologies for last week, because I told you Louisville would cover 13.5. And then Jeff Brom did a very Jeff Brom thing and just went into Miami and beat the number 2 team in college football. No big deal. Just casual Jeff Brom things. Fade of the week didn't hit. Lock of the week did hit. I don't know what to tell you at this point. This is just a game you should have circled. And I'm telling you that you should have action on this game. Bet responsibly. But double-digit dogs are covering left and right with this segment. So you know what? We're going to go back to the well. Maybe that's the constant in all this. Oh, I tell you that Penn State's going to minus 24.5. And then they lose the game outright.
Wherever chaos has happened this season, Conor O'Gara has been right there picking against it.
I need a rebranding. This needs to just be watch this game this week and expect madness to unfold. So we talked about this team earlier, Will. Michigan State's a 14.5 point underdog hosting Michigan. Keyword there, hosting. Rivalry game. Michigan State has nothing to lose except yet another Big Ten game. Michigan's offense is a problem and not in a good way. Still can't throw the ball. Outside of Justice Haynes, sort of a lost group. When they don't get chunk plays from him, it's kind of over. This was a 7-point game last year in Ann Arbor with their respective first-year head coaches. I can see that happening again here. Not saying Michigan State pulls off the upset, but then again, who am I to say with this segment? I mean, for all I know, I just circled the next double-digit upset that's going to happen in college football. But this trickier matchup for Michigan than this has been in years past, despite probably what everything would tell you about Michigan State. And maybe the fact that Michigan State was playing in a relatively competitive game in the middle of the second quarter against Indiana is pushing me in this direction. That's neither here nor there.
Yeah, Michigan offense, they're sorry. Let me tell you, they got Bryce Underwood. They can run the football. Must really stink to be them. Anyway.
Somehow it all roads lead back to LSU. They always do.
I was watching that game last night. I was like, this kid looks so good. Like, and again, like their commander. I just think that they don't have a good coaching staff, but it is what it is. I'm. Last week you had me believing in the Miami fan base at home. I don't even know what to say anymore, but I get it, and I'm going to abstain from this one. I already picked the Mississippi State upset. I understand.
I did so many Jack Nicholson nods during that Louisville Miami game last Friday. Just this is it.
Yes, yes, it's the Jack Nicholson sicko. I can't believe no one's done that yet, actually.
Yeah. All right, let's kick it to Brad Crawford. He discussed the Shane Beamer Virginia Tech drama that he was at the center of, and something that we talked about on the Sunday recap pod. Plus, we dig into the Florida job and a really interesting national championship hypothetical that's unfolding. So here is Brad Crawford. For those of you who are not watching Saturday Down South podcast on YouTube and just are audio only, now would be a good time to go on YouTube and subscribe to Saturday Down South, because we have all of our episodes are uploaded in full. If you like watching our individual game breakdowns, you're like, hey, you know what? 2-hour pod, that's really not for me. I really just kind of want to hear about my own team. That's fine. Saturday Down South on YouTube. We're going to have all of those matchup breakdowns. We do every single power conference game. We preview, we recap. That involve the SEC. So we have so much content right now on Saturday Down South on YouTube. We have YouTube exclusive videos, and sometimes we'll do interviews that are just on Saturday Down South on YouTube. So definitely go subscribe. Please do that right now. Now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is Brad Crawford. Brad, let's start with the thing that you've been writing, talking about since Saturday, because Oklahoma comes into South Carolina, dominates. We were texting about it in the middle of that game about Beamer, and specifically about whether the Virginia Tech vacancy would actually make sense for him. I kind of pushed back. You wrote about this, a column that was sourced, and I've known you for 10 years, and you're not one to just kind of throw crap on the wall and hope it sticks. Beamer denied interest, and he was basically asked about your reporting, your story. Explain how all this came to be and where it kind of stands right now.
Yeah, man. Middle of September, I came out with an initial article after Virginia Tech Hokies fired Brent Pry, saying Shane Beamer, a couple other guys were at the top of their hit list. That was after talking to several people I knew were going to be on Virginia Tech's search committee. 6 weeks later, they've all signed NDAs. I've had to source things elsewhere in Blacksburg and in Columbia. And Shane Beamer still remains at the top of Virginia Tech's list from at least half of those 8 members on that search committee. And the big thing for me, look, I don't think Shane Beamer is going to take Virginia Tech job. I think he would if the Hokies offered him something far more expansive than what he's currently getting at South Carolina. He makes $8.1 million a year. His buyout, if the Gamecocks fire him, is $28 million. So you're thinking about a compensation package, Connor, that would have to exceed, 45 to 50 million to get Shane to jump to Virginia Tech. That's not going to happen. But I thought it was funny though, him denying it, mentioning being by name. I mean, he's right. Him and I have not spoke face to face in 2 years. Last time I talked to him was, behind the scenes at media days. I did not attend media days in Atlanta this past summer, but that does not change the fact that Shane Beamer loves Virginia Tech. His father is synonymous with the greatness there, and he would hop at the opportunity to get back if things continue to worsen for the Gamecocks.
So that's the way that I tried to phrase it when I brought this up on the pod on Sunday, was like things have, I think since this initial vacancy, things have changed at South Carolina, and you could look at certain things at Virginia Tech and kind of wonder, well, if you're going to have to restart all of these things at South Carolina, you have a different boss than the one who initially hired you with the Ray Tanner situation, his retirement last year, which is always something that needs to be factored into this. But your sourcing of Virginia Tech's interest isn't necessarily a surprise. I think what kind of surprised me initially when we started talking about this was like, look, there could be a real decision that he has to make here, because he is looking at what he has at South Carolina, why this has not worked out, and gone, am I maybe better off at Virginia Tech? How bad would things have to get for this to truly be, man, the pasture over there, it might actually be greener at Virginia Tech?
I think there's a strong chance that South Carolina does hit rock bottom this year and finishes 4-8 with the lone win the rest of the way over these final 5 or 6 games coming against Coastal in November. I still don't see Shane jumping ship, but the big thing here is particularly I don't see the Hokies waiting until late November, waiting on Shane Beamer to tell them yes. By that time, I mean, the Hokies need to have somebody in place to start putting a recruiting board together. There's a reason that they fired Brent Pry in the middle of September. That was to get this search started. And try to get out ahead of these, other power conference jobs that are going to be open. I spoke to a source very close to Jeremiah Donati over the weekend too, actually after this article came out, to just sort of gauge, what Jeremiah feels about Shane. Shane said on the record Sunday night they both have an in-step relationship, and I do believe that. That source told me that Donati is not going to fire a head coach in year one as an SEC AD. I wouldn't say he doesn't have the guts to, but like I said, that buyout is $28 million. And if I'm Shane Beamer, I'm making South Carolina pay me that out because I got extended and a raise in January after finishing one win short of making the college football playoff last season. But yeah, it was just funny his response to, my article singling me out. This is what every coach says when a report comes out linking him to another job. And he's been known a little bit to be aggravated by the truth. He gets a little testy at times during press conferences. This is Shane being Shane, and he's a politician like every other Power 4 coach.
Do you think this is wearing on him? Because I feel like he looks like someone that's got a different energy than the Shane Beamer that I feel like we've both gotten to know since he's come to South Carolina.
Yeah. In the offseason, he was super loose. I saw him next to Paul Feinbaum telling him, we believe we can win an SEC championship here. And now here we are in mid-October. Shane looks as if he's aged, 5 or 6 years during this, let's call it a disastrous start. Gamecocks had a favorable slate to begin the year. Really, a lot of fans thought that, you start the season with 4 or 5 wins going to LSU, you're in real good position to get in the playoff for the first time. You lose to Vanderbilt at home by 24 points. You lose to Missouri, and then the kind of wheels fall off from there. So, yeah, I think Shane's feeling the pressure a little bit. When I wrote the initial story in mid-September, a high-end Gamecock booster told me, the only way Shane would leave South Carolina is if our fans turned on him. Well, 6 weeks later, fans are starting to turn on Shane Beamer.
What in the world's going on with this Mike Shula situation?
He's got to get the axe, whether it comes this week, next, end of season. This is the third OC that Shane Beamer's had, Connor, that the fan base and some boosters are sort of scratching their heads over. But Mike Shula's been the worst. Last in the SEC right now at midseason in total offense, last in scoring offense. I think second to last in third down conversions, most tackles for loss allowed. It starts on the offensive line. Players have not been developed there. They've got 4- and 5-star guys literally at those starting positions. I know they've had some injuries, but blocking for Lenore Sellers has not been a strong suit. They've had some whiffs in the transfer portal. They do not have a true SEC RB1 right now when they really need a guy. And then Lenore Sellers just is not the fit in this pro-style scheme. The first 6 games last year with Dow Loggins, Sellers had some mistakes, had some turnovers. He settled down and looked like one of the nation's best quarterbacks the second half of the season. Then Dow Loggins goes to Appalachian State. Shane Beamer promotes Mike Shula. There were some questions on whether or not it would work, and definitively it has not worked whatsoever.
Yeah, I defended Dow Loggins from a quarterback development standpoint, not from a schematic standpoint. And we're seeing now a coordinator that I think is failing in both regards. I think if the hope was, and I don't say this as a comparison, but let's be honest, Mike Shula got this job in part because of the work they did with Cam Newton. And
Sure.
that was a big part of his credential, at the top of his resume. And the hope was he was going to be able to harness some of these skills with Lenore Sellers. I don't know that you can really look at the skills that he's harnessed when he's spending half the game running for his life. I mean, it's a brutal watch. And I feel like right now, if you're Shane Beamer, you have to make this move before the end of the season. I don't think you can go into the offseason thinking like, maybe this is the guy, maybe this isn't. I agree with you 100%. Like the axe needs to come and probably needs to be an Oklahoma type situation where the OC doesn't even get to November.
Yeah, I don't see Mike Shula keeping his job past the Alabama game if something happens Saturday afternoon where Bama wins 45-7, which is, I wouldn't say likely, but it's certainly possible based on what we've seen with this offense so far. Lenore Sellers has regressed too. I know Mike Shula's getting a ton of the blame, no run game, some wide receiver issues, can't block for Sellers, but there's been some guys open at times as well, and Lenore Sellers just haven't seen him. I don't think he's comfortable within this scheme, and that's pretty noticeable through the first 7 games.
What chance do you give the Gamecocks to pull off the 2010 Steven Garcia? None?
None. And my picks, especially for South Carolina, have been almost perfect this season. I don't see it happening. I'm worried about what's happening inside that locker room right now. I'm not questioning the Beamer era coming to an end or anything like that this season, but I just get a sense that a lot of those offensive guys aren't on the same page. They're not playing with any kind of tenacity at the line of scrimmage. And meanwhile, this opponent coming in is the SEC favorite, 4 straight wins over top 25 teams. Probably going to lay a crooked number inside Williams-Brice.
And Dylan Stewart, getting banged up last game too, just kind of adds to it. You're like, man, you're not even going to get maybe your best overall player out on that field. Yes, it could definitely get ugly, and it wouldn't necessarily be a stunner. I haven't heard a single Florida fan sign off on a potential Eli Drinkwitz fit in Gainesville. What are your thoughts on that?
They could do far worse than Eli Drinkwitz.
I agree.
I think he's 27-6, man. His last 3 years, beat Ohio State a couple of years ago in the Cotton Bowl, a team that a lot of us thought Ohio State would have been in the playoff that year. But I've always liked Eli Drinkwitz. I think he could stick the knife in Kirby a little bit with some pregame fight stuff at Florida. I like what he says a lot in his pressers, and like I said, he wins. He develops talent and he locates talent in the transfer portal. Billy Napier hadn't done a great job of that in his 4 seasons at Florida. I do not think Drinkwitz will be the hire. I think he'd be like behind door number 3 or 4. Once you get past Lane Kiffin and maybe a Jed Fish in Gainesville.
And that would be it would feel really similar to Mullen. It would feel really similar who was behind door 3 and number 4, depending on who you talk to, with Scott Strickland, and a hire that, like, if it was so obvious, it probably would have been made initially. But people would push back in part because I think Drink is viewed as this dorky guy, and he's like not cool enough for the job. Which to me, like, whether Florida fans want to admit it or not, if this guy was Joe Cool, and if he had the swag that let's just say Lane Kiffin does, I think we're having a different discussion.
I mean, do you want a sexy hire or do you want to win SEC football games? That's the question that Scott Strickland and the search committee, whatever he puts together, has to ask themselves. I don't think this move would have been made now, Connor, if they didn't have a guy they felt strongly about in their crosshairs. And inside the industry, I know you've heard the same from sources, it's Lane Kiffin or bust.
It feels like it at this point. I'm on record saying I don't think he's going to leave Oxford for Florida. Nothing will stun me.
I wouldn't either.
Yeah, like you got to think about it from this context too of what Ole Miss is doing to keep him, the resources they're continuing to try and improve, which they've been able to do that, and that's why he's had 6 years in Oxford. And Florida, like what Florida fans, I'm like, I feel like I keep having to explain this to, and I'm sure you dealt with this as well. Like, do you realize the contract that it's going to take to eventually get Lane Kiffin out of Oxford? Like what we're talking about here. And you can say like, oh, Florida's going to be willing to make it happen. Until we actually see Florida spend like that on a head coach, I don't know that we can assume that that's so imminent. And if you're Lane, like it's going to look really similar at Florida as it will at Ole Miss. It really will.
And when you consider that investment in Lane Kiffin, if he does take over the leadership role for the Gators, let's say he signs a 6-year contract, all right, and it's a gargantuan number. He could win 10 games a season, Connor, but if he doesn't have one national title in those 6 years, hiring Lane Kiffin was a failure. And at Ole Miss, they're already talking behind the scenes. AD said this week on the record, we'd like to get Lane a Kirk Cignetti-like contract. Then why leave for another job if you're winning big at Ole Miss already? And if I'm Lane Kiffin, this really couldn't come at a worse time because I have one of the SEC's best teams right now. I'm probably going to finish 10-2 and make the playoff, and then leave for Florida and like leave my team, at the altar with a playoff game in December. So I think it's very interesting the next few weeks seeing how that search unfolds.
I can't wait to see how a lot of these searches unfold with playoff hopeful teams and coaches that could be attached to those jobs. Yeah. That's the thing that's kind of lost in the shuffle of this wild coaching carousel, and why it could get even more wild if Florida State, Auburn both join the mix. Let's have
maybe.
We'll see. For now, because I'm a little bit more like Brian Kelly's going to get a little bit of grace with Scott Woodward, and I think he will get a year 5 in which he'd be on everybody's hot seat list if this doesn't end up in a playoff berth. Who knows at this point? But let's just say, hypothetically speaking, Florida State, Auburn, Florida, Penn State. What is the best job in that group in the very likely event, in my opinion, that all 4 are vacant at season's end.
And Florida's not in that group, you said, right?
No, Florida is in that group. Florida State, Auburn, Florida, Penn State. Those 4. Let's say they're all vacant, and you, Brad Crawford, have your pick of the litter. You want to go win a national championship. That's your goal. Which one of those jobs are you picking?
I would take the Florida job as long as the current job I have, I don't feel like I can get to a level where I can get a ring there. And if I'm in Lane Kiffin's seat, I mean, I've won 10, 11 games, 4 or 5 times in Oxford now, counting this season where we're expecting him to get that double-digit number. I probably don't leave, but I do think Florida, out of the jobs that are currently open and ones that we expect to be open, I think that's the spot where it's a top 10 elite job. You're in the right conference. You're in the right state as far as the talent bed is concerned. And you've shown, at least in the last 2 decades, that you can win big there. So Florida's the best job out of that handful.
I think we need to do something for Ole Miss fans if they are able to weather the storm with this coaching carousel, this very robust coaching carousel, which has plenty of potential suitors for Lane Kiffin. If this comes and goes with Lane staying at Ole Miss, I will be of the mindset moving forward, and I will hold myself to this. I promise you, Ole Miss fans, Bam or bust for Lane. Bam or bust. That's the only job that he would be leaving for, in my opinion, if it were to come open. I think we need to get on board with that reality if this coaching carousel still ends with Lane Kiffin in Oxford.
It would certainly feel that way, wouldn't it? And, as much respect as he has for Nick Saban, it seems like he name drops Nick, every couple of weeks, every little chance he gets to fit in something post-game, something he learned from Nick. He has a ton of respect for the former leader there in Tuscaloosa and that program itself, having called plays for several top 10 teams.
In non-coaching carousel things, to me, I think it feels a little bit early to declare Ohio State and everyone else in college football like Ohio State's the only elite team. And definitely it's in part because Indiana's sitting there at number 2 and A&M is at number 3. Let's put this in 3 buckets for you, and you get to pick a national championship winner. Bucket 1 is Ohio State. Bucket 2 is the SEC. And then bucket 3 is anyone outside of those 17 teams to win a national title. Which bucket would you go with?
I'd probably take the SEC, only because those teams are battle tested, and I'm going to have 4 cracks at the apple instead of 1 with Ohio State in the playoff. I like Ohio State a lot. I like Miami a lot heading into last week because they're what I thought was the best team in college football on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Mario Cristobal, man, once again stubbed his toe in a game that he had no business losing. I will say about Ohio State, that defense right now is the best in college football. At some point, Ohio State's going to play a competitive game. So I need to see how the Buckeyes look in a competitive game in the second half. But your Indiana Hoosiers are playing really well. And Texas A&M, man, it's the one top 5 team that I still don't feel like I have a full grasp on yet. Giving up 500-plus yards to Arkansas, lucky to come back and beat Notre Dame a couple weeks ago. Notre Dame's a very good team, by the way. But A&M's a team that I just feel with that injury to Le'Veon Moss, maybe the season starts to go the other way this weekend in Baton Rouge.
But at the same time, I think this team is built to handle that better than last year's did. And last year when Le'Veon Moss suffers that injury against South Carolina, it's a huge turning point in their season. And they're like looking at this going, man, what are we going to do now offensively? They just struggled to have that identity. Doesn't it kind of feel, though, like this is the team that is able to win a game in a variety of ways, and they are looking at this rest of the season going, well, we haven't played our best game yet. Mike Elko, it looks like he's ticked off at his team at 7-0, which is I kind of love that, though. I think we need a little bit more of that in college football instead of defending your team against the criticism constantly.
Just like Nick Saban always said after Bama would start off 7 or 8-0, our end game is 2 months from now. Who cares about the first half of the season? That's sort of what Mike Elko has alluded to after every game, seeing his defense give up big plays. And the fact that this team is somewhat different than last year is because Marcel Reed has, had more starts under his belt. He's a more seasoned quarterback. I know he's thrown some picks, but man, that comeback he had in South Bend last month it showed me a lot. He was an early preseason Heisman candidate for me. And I think maybe he gets back in that mix too if A&M is, 11-0 playing Texas here in a few weeks.
Yeah, if A&M gets to an SEC championship for the first time, like that Marcel Reed Heisman ticket's going to be really interesting to watch. A team that's very, very far away from conference title contention at this point. Brad, since since week 9, 3 years ago, Clemson is now 20-15 against power conference competition and has lost 5 consecutive power conference home games. The only SEC teams riding a 5 consecutive power conference home loss streak in the SEC, at least, Arkansas and Kentucky. What in the world is next for Dabo Swinney?
I mean, we're only 2 years removed, Connor, from South Carolina ending Clemson's like 38 game home winning streak. I mean, this is just a crazy turn of events, and to be honest, it all started for me when Brent Venables left Dabo Swinney's staff.
Yep.
The defense has not played with the same level of aggression since. It looks discombobulated at times. Sure, Clemson beat an awful Bill Belichick team, was able to beat up on Boston College on the road, but against any teams of substance this season, Clemson's looked average. And it's been a huge shock because they were preseason top 5. Cade Klubnik's a guy that I had a, mid-August Heisman future ticket on because I thought he was going to have a 40 touchdown, 5 interception year, and Clemson would be 11-1 or something. But man, it's a rough go of things. I would be shocked if Clemson gets rid of Dabo. Clemson's not that arrogant to dump a 2-time national champion, but the downturn is real with that program. I don't see Dabo becoming a factor in the national title race anymore in Death Valley.
Yeah, and I do wonder, too, how much people are looking at this James Franklin situation going, see, well, you can fire a coach and pay him that amount of money, and maybe Kentucky's going to do the same with Mark Stoops. But at the same time, it's different when you got the rings. It's just different. When was the last time we saw a coach with multiple national title rings get fired? There's probably one that I'm just omitting, but it's different if you fire an Ed Ogeron or something like that who's got one ring. But to fire a coach with
Fisher fired at A&M, yeah, just one ring, but
just the one ring, yeah. Multiple. I'm gonna have to go back and look that one up because it's been a very, very long time. Last one for you here. Should Steve Sarkisian go find a $3 million offensive play caller this offseason, like a Tim Beck or a Kirby Moore? Like where do you stand on the discourse right now with Texas and him potentially finding an offensive play caller?
I think Steve Sarkisian still knows what he's doing offensively. I saw him scheme up Devontae Smith to get like 12 receptions in the first half of that Bama win over Ohio State a couple years ago. He's a great play caller. I think the issue this season has been the Texas O-line is not near as good as we thought it would be. Arch Manning is, Sark has schemed guys open and Arch has thrown the ball at their feet, or he's been inconsistent airmailing passes. The run game has been banged up. They're not dominant at the line of scrimmage with some strong running backs back there. So it's a combination of issues at Texas. The big thing for me is just Texas is overrated, not as good as preseason number 1, obviously, like we thought they'd be. But I'm not bailing on Steve Sarkisian yet as a play caller, and if I'm him, I'm still calling plays too. Last
one. Just kidding. Arch Manning, he's at Texas next year, right?
Well, he won't be at the NFL. That's for sure. Yeah, he's going to be at Texas. Unless something happens, Connor, during spring practice where somebody overtakes him on the depth chart, then things might get hairy.
That's a tough thing to do in this day and age with the money that's being committed. Yeah. I know we see situations like Notre Dame where, you have a guy emerge who just like CJ Carr is just awesome. And it was so obvious
right now. He's playing a cheaper option. So.
That's true. Be fascinating to see. Brad, great stuff, man. We'll do it again soon.
Good to see you, man.
Before we get to the rest of the podcast, I want to talk to you guys about Kalshi. This is something that is blowing up right now. Maybe you've seen people reference Kalshi in relation to a lot of different things that are going on in the world. And basically, this is a place where you can make money off of predictions. What do we do on these preview pods? We predict things. We tell you, hey, this is how you would bet here. This is how you would bet there. This isn't betting. This is sports trading. This is the ability to make predictions and say, hey, I can make money off of that. If you go to Kalshi right now, you can see that they have markets for a variety of different things. You can predict who's going to be the next head coach at UNC or Penn State or these different things that there are markets for. And the cool thing about this, all 50 states you can do this in. They are legal at the federal level. It's not a state-by-state deal. And so Kalshi has just a wide variety of things that you can make picks on, make predictions on, and win money. It's a really, really cool source to be able to kind of flex some of those prediction muscles. I know all of you listening to this, you guys can see into the crystal ball. So use the promo code SDS, get signed up today, and make yourself some money on Kalshi. All right, well, let's close with some lad of the week. You want me to get started?
Go ahead.
All right. Alex Mortensen, the interim coach for UAB, the son of the late Chris Mortensen of ESPN fame. Chris Mortensen, Alex Mortensen might be the first father-son lad of the week combo that I've made here. Don't fact check me on that. But
look at that.
Yeah, Alex Mortensen walked into a situation that was really, really difficult with a lost UAB team, or at least it looked very lost under Trent Dilfer. And all he did was just lead him to this monumental win against unbeaten Memphis, who was trying to compete for a college football playoff spot. And this interim coach energy needs to be something that in the midst of all this coaching carousel talk, we need to praise. And so for those who don't really know kind of like the Alex Mortensen background, so we've spent a lot of time as an offensive analyst on Nick Saban's staff. Bruce Feldman wrote a really good piece about him with The Athletic a few years ago. And as someone that has like been kind of in the shadows, he like played at Arkansas, obviously, so maybe SEC fans know him from there as well. But is someone that is like, and just kind of keep your eye on him. Just kind of keep your eye on him. And so for him to have a moment like that on that stage, like rest assured, his dad's looking down, like just so proud of him to be able to get that. Guy's 39 years old. Hopefully got a very long, successful coaching career ahead of him, and somebody that's probably got some really good connections at this point and is now getting an opportunity on this stage. And everybody's talking about like what UCLA has done since firing the coaching staff. And there's a lot of discussion about should you fire your coaching staff early in the season and just kind of hope that your interim coach can inject some life, inject some energy into your fan base. And this is going to be in the pro do that column, like just absolutely will be. And who knows if he can keep it up, but you can't take that away from him. Like as a win against the top 25 team, a Memphis team that we saw Arkansas unable to put them away and struggled with them. And for a UAB, a team that just looked like a disaster, to come out and win that game, just tip of the cap. You just kind of never really know with these interim coaches.
Yeah, I guess the first time I had heard of him is he continues to be his late father's Twitter avatar, and there were a couple of times where it's like it's Alex like handing off a pass at Arkansas to I believe Darren McFadden, and there was a couple of times where people would just like dump on Chris Mortensen, who was like, still 2 million Twitter followers even after all like the Elon stuff, and it's like people would be like, oh, like somebody just didn't know who that was. He'd be like, hey, like, oh, you got Arkansas, maybe you played at Arkansas, and he would just like vehemently defend his son. Like that was like the only thing he would like break professionalism for. He'd be like, that was my son, hand off to Darren McFadden. I'm so proud of him. And it was like so cool to see like him just like hype up his son. Like his avatar's never changing. I'm so proud of him. And it's so dope, like kind of that, and to see him now succeed.
I've talked about this before when Chris Mortensen, when he died, how he always kind of reminded me of my dad. And so I've always kind of had a soft spot for him and just felt like just his tone and just kind of the way that he approached his work, just always had so much respect for that guy. And so to see his son kind of doing it at this stage, like, man, you hope that family is just appreciating every moment of this. And I'm sure it's bittersweet for him and he wished he could just give his dad a hug after that game, but still just an awesome moment for that guy and for that family.
Yeah, and for the people of Birmingham who've certainly suffered enough at the hands of UAB. So, yeah, that's it's again, when you have nothing to lose, that's sometimes when you find the most hope. And I think that could be a great fit. And again, that's sometimes you hire the big name guy, doesn't exactly work out, and you find hope internally, exactly as UCLA has done in different ways. So on to me, I got a couple here. So I am coming through with my promise in the recap pod. Zion Young, what an absolute lad performance by him. A career high 2 sacks, a career high 2 TFLs, the Jackson Arnold eraser against Auburn, right? And then he comes out for this overtime where, it's been a defensive game on both sides of the ball. We talked about being physical. Mizzou, one of the most physical teams in the SEC, just a tone setter by Zion Young. A lesser more sheepish referee may have flagged him for what he did on the coin toss, but they let him celebrate. They let him talk his mess, and he backed it up. It was electric. This is what college football is. People have gotten so soft, and it's not in the way that people think it is. It's more about, I think fragile masculinity to a degree, where we see a lot of referees getting like, oh, let me just throw a flag here. It's cool to see that NFL referee the other day that played at Rutgers kind of shielding that player in the NFL. Need more examples of that, of referees being like, hey, like, let's let this game let's not be a part of this game. Let's let the game continue. So that being said, shout out officiating for the first time. But that being said, so cool to watch Zion Young have this really cool kind of like crap talking moment and backing it up in overtime, where I believe he had big plays in overtime as well to kind of limit the good.
He was huge. He was awesome in that game. I mean, really, really good. So he's been really important for what they've done post Blake Baker with this defense with Corey Batoon. And just another reason why, if you're not keeping your ear to the ground, trying to recruit the portal, like you miss out on guys like this. This is someone who was playing at Michigan State, but wasn't playing at this level. And now all of a sudden, like he just looks so experienced out there. It is just a really, really tough guy to contain for 60 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, again, just the identity of the new Mizzou, defense, new team. Again, you lose Blake Baker. Oh, what are we going to do? We're just going to stay right where we were. You lose Brady Cook. What are we going to do? We're going to stay right where we were. So again, just loving the Mizzou culture. And then on to the next one. Would be remiss if we didn't bring up George Springer, who had, and we were talking about this off air. I guess this has to be a formatting thing, folks, but this guy has the third most postseason home runs in MLB history.
Didn't believe you when you said that. I'm like, surely that's an AI stat or something like that's made up. There's no 23 postseason bombs for George Springer.
Yes. And I mean, that's just insane. We talked about off air a little bit of stuff with the Astros. Now, some of that's seen as like tainted around baseball, all that different stuff. But to leave that team, right? We've seen so many guys try to do it. Tom Brady did it successfully. Bill Belichick unsuccessfully, right? We've seen the guys kind of get out of the shadow of their former team, whatever that would be. And I think for George Springer and for, the city of Toronto, I think it's so massive, a fan base and a team that's been so downtrodden in the AL East for all these years. They got a thick superstar in Vladdy Jr. I'm always going to root for that.
Rocking the Austin Matthews jersey, even though he was like 0-6 in game 7s. I was like, does he know?
Does he know? Yeah. So you might not be the biggest hockey. No, but point being, like, it's just cool to see. Somebody said, bring me this World Series in NBA terms. And they said the Toronto Raptors versus the Western All-Stars, which I think is pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
So it's funny when America's team is Canadian, but I think they've done that. It's like what if I told you a guy involved in a cheating scandal who is on a Canadian team would become America's team at the World Series? We're living that right now. So another very interesting World Series. It's not, evil versus evil. I'm not going to make the metaphor I usually do like it was last year with the Yankees and the Dodgers, but just super cool for George Springer, super cool moment, super cool for this team. Again, like we're both big dumper guys, probably rooting for the Mariners there, but I think either team out of the AL there would have been pretty cool. So yeah, just this is why postseason baseball is so special, man.
Electric. Man, what atmospheres that those two fan bases were able to provide. Just so cool and big time moment. Again, I would have preferred to see the Mariners win that. Cal Raleigh in the World Series would have been awesome, but postseason baseball, man, when it hits right, it is so unbelievably good. The only thing I'm hoping for with this World Series, I obviously want the Blue Jays. I'm not going to sit here and root for the Dodgers. I just can't stomach a 4-0 Dodgers sweep. Would just kill so much of the great momentum. And for a sport that looks like it's probably heading towards a labor strike again, this would just be kind of like a damper of like, you had people that are getting really excited about baseball once again. I think the pitch clock has done awesome things. And if it's just the big bad Dodgers that come out here and just kill everyone, it's kind of like, what was that all really for? It just kind of, it's not to say it lacks meaning, but I think it would just kind of put a damper on it. So, and the funny thing is too, like, I know some Dodger fans that are great, and some of the most diehard baseball fans I've ever seen are Dodger fans I know. Like I was friends with a guy like throughout college who, first guy I've ever seen that bought MLB TV at age 18 and had to be locked in for every single game as like an out of market guy. And like, because I was friends with his roommate. Like I'd go over to his roommate's room and like we'd play Madden and stuff like that. And he'd just be sitting there like on his computer, dialed into all things Dodgers. And he like it's a different era. That was 2008. So like it's a different time, now compared to then. But it's funny because like the Dodgers get labeled as just having like the worst fans ever. I actually think of the Dodger fans that I know in my life. I'm like, oh, they actually like really care a lot. They're not very casual about it.
For a team that's as, what they are, right? Huge money, LA baseball. Like, I would say they're less annoying than like, Cowboys, Yankees, Lakers style fan. Like, they seem like they really know ball.
Yeah, they do. It's just their team is the most, inevitable thing in the world. And Shohei is just the best baseball player that's ever lived. And he just happens to be at the heart of, all of this. And it just feels unfair. It just feels unfair. And it makes me feel better as a Cub fan knowing that the Brewers just got swept instantly, because the Cubs probably would have been swept too. So what are you going to do? But yeah, good lad of the week. God, I can't believe George Springer's got 23 postseason home runs. I can't believe that.
Yeah, and he's getting up there too. He's such a fresh-faced, like smiley guy. He still feels a little bit young. He's 36, so he's been around. Like this, that makes sense when you think about it again, playoff expansion, all that different stuff. But yeah, and I'll give you a quick story before we get out of here. Speaking of MLB TV, when I was in college, T-Mobile gave away a free annual subscription to MLB TV.
I remember
so
that.
around the same time every year, I would say, how would I say this? I would strongly consider getting T-Mobile. I would get a trial plan and I would think about it. And every year I would go, maybe I don't want T-Mobile, but I would end up with MLB TV. And that's what college is about.
This is true.
I would make a good-hearted effort to switch to T-Mobile every year. That would last a couple of weeks.
You thought about that perk and then you're like, it's probably not enough. Probably going to do a little more. Can you get like
Exactly.
NFL, can I get the red zone package too? Like, is that part of this, or, what was college? There was like an ESPNU package that you could get back in the day as well. Jefferson Pilot. Can I get that as well?
Yeah, just put an antenna on my phone. Let me just get OTA. Yeah,
that'd be great. All right, week 9 should be a good one. Should be really, really good. It'll be a little bit different for your boy, but we will be able to make it work. Please, please, please leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every episode of the Saturday Down South podcast. Follow us on Twitter at the SDS Pod, at Sat Down South, at CJ Rivera, at Go So Hard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.